Thank you, though.
Yeah,
Test.
Our power went out at 2 o'clock.
yeah, mine too.
friendly lakefront community where people want to live, start a business, vacation, and the strategic plan goals that are guiding principles include making Clearlake a visibly cleaner city, making Clearlake a statistically safer city, to improve quality of life with improved public facilities, improve the image of Clearlake, ensure fiscal sustainability of the city, update policies and procedures to current government standards, and support economic development. And our session outline for the remainder is we're going to look at the economic outlook for the state of California and the potential impacts to the city of Clearlake. We'll do a quick overview of all funds in aggregate and then the general fund in overview in particular. And we'll be taking a look at capital projects and personnel, and then reviewing special funds, Measure P, Measure V, and gas. So yesterday I had the opportunity to go to the California Society of Municipal Finance Officers. They had a chapter meeting in Ukiah where Michael Coleman was a presenter, and I'm sure you're familiar with him from trainings and conferences. And he was talking about the budget swings in the state of California. The June 22, they had the $97.5 billion budget surplus, and then a year later in June 23, a $31.5 billion budget gap. And the governor has contributed that to swings in capital gains taxes based on the volatility of the stock market. And we're fortunate that the state of California has a very healthy reserve, but tapping into the reserve at the tune of $31.5 billion would require the governor to declare a fiscal emergency. And the conversation yesterday was very much around the unlikelihood of that actually happening.
Can't run for president after you do that.
Exactly. So he talked about a number of different strategies they'll likely be using to avoid declaring a fiscal emergency, and was talking about how the state of California has the ability to do interfund borrowing that can cross fiscal years in ways that local governments can't do, and that could be a big part of their management of that gap going forward. And in regards to impacts to the city of Clearlake, his point was that it really is limited because we've done a really good job of protecting tax rates and then their actual allocations of the rates by constitutional protection. And so there shouldn't be a big impact of the economic swings in the state of California in regards to revenue access for our local government. And the one thing that he did note that was potentially impactful was that they are looking at proposed clawbacks for competitive grants for housing. And they're looking at clawing back over $200 million in grant funds that have already been awarded for agencies that can't prove that they're making progress on using the funds. And there's also potential for clawing back ARPA funds that aren't spent by the deadline. Fortunately, the city of Clearlake is very effective at utilizing resources for large capital projects, and we don't anticipate having problems using those resources, but will definitely into the resolution.
Question. What our tax consultants are saying, are they saying flat, a little bit down? Any projections?
We are relatively flat. The projections a little bit farther in. We'll talk a little bit more about the different tax revenues and what the impacts look like they're going to be. So Just a basic budget overview. The budget is structurally balanced, and the ongoing revenues are able to pay for the ongoing expenses. So one-time revenues are being used for one-time expenses as well. And we have relatively flat revenues, and we have had to look at cost reductions to cover salary increases. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. And as a result, we are not adding any additional full-time employee positions at this time. We have had to do increased use of special revenue funds transferred into the general fund to support general fund expenses. And we currently have no new significant programs or initiatives. And as Alan mentioned in opening, that capital project program is still strong, and where the largest of our revenue is coming in.
I guess you're probably going to get into it later, but what special funds are we talking about?
Well, primarily Measure P and gas tax.
Measure V?
Measure P.
I know, but not Measure V.
And not at the level that we're looking at for Measure
There
P.
is some in Measure B. I mean, like audit expenses and other things like that. We use allocation to
That are
cover
allowed,
some
yeah,
stuff.
allowed under our Measure
Right.
V restrictions.
Okay, so for all of our funds combined in aggregate, our revenue is $34,412,000, and our expenses are $59,687,000. Use of fund balance is roughly $25.27 million, and of that is accounted for at $13.2 million in the Measure V loan fund that we're looking to use this year, $6.7 million in capital projects, $3.2 million in ARPA funds, $1.4 million in housing funds, and then other funds bring up the remaining $770,000.
Are those housing funds, the 1.4, is that at all in jeopardy with the clawback?
No, these are Series B funds.
Okay.
I mean, this is all money that, like, the reason it's, I mean, it looks out of balance, but it's because we have the money right now, right? And we got it in the previous year, like ARPA, we got over the last 2 fiscal years, so we have the money in our account. There's no new revenue coming in, right? And Measure B loan fund, the bank gave us the money, it's sitting there, we're spending the loan fund. So, you know, you shouldn't feel like, oh no, we have $25 million deficit in the budget. Technically speaking, we do, but it's
covered.
right.
Okay, and in our general fund specifically, revenue is $8.73 million with expenses a little over $9 million. We have $300,000 in use of fund balance. And your computer has all my notes on it. And this one doesn't. So if we can just go, but I can't see that. A brief switch. Make sure that
I'm excited to see this because this looks like my home budget.
Really?
Not those big
I
numbers,
know.
but one's bigger than the other and they're backwards.
Okay, we are back in business. All right, so in regards to revenues, Dirk, to answer your question, property tax revenues are stable. And we actually did conservative estimates in regards to property tax in lieu of vehicle license fees. So we believe there's some potential for higher than budgeted revenues to come in there. Sales tax estimates are flat to slightly reduced for HDL's estimations. And TOT tax is strong. The lake being full is expected to have a positive impact on tourism. And looking at franchise fees, water revenues are relatively flat. Garbage is increasing as a result of using the administrative penalties for payment collection. PG&E is increasing, we believe, as a result of increased rate to customers, and MediaCom is slightly declining, which will impact our revenues as well as PEG TV.
Does MediaCom pay any franchise tax?
Who?
Does
MediaCom.
MediaCom
Yes.
pay any franchise tax?
Yes, and those are reducing slightly over the last couple of years, and we use a portion of the MediaCom franchise fees that come in are then contributed by us to PEG TV. So, and for their operating costs, so it's potential impact to our revenue as well as to PEG TV.
How about, I guess this is an overall issue, but, since more people are streaming, we don't get any franchise tax from AT&T, right? I guess, can we, Brian?
Yeah, we looked at that before because there's an exception for telecom, but
I mean, the field is really getting a little blurry because, AT&T,
Everything MediaCom does now, so
anyway,
when they were just a telephone line, you see that, but now they're
more,
internet now, so.
or at least they could parse it out and pay now, pro rata share of that.
Should check into that.
yeah, we need to look into that.
We have that, and we'll get back to you on that. And so building permits budget has increased we built in an increase about $50,000 over last year in anticipation of an apartment project that will be filing for permits this next coming fiscal year. To note, cannabis development impact fees have dropped significantly from fiscal year 2021, we brought in close to $200,000 in revenues. In 21-22, it was around $48,000, and this fiscal year to date, we brought in $3,000. So
How much?
3,000, yes.
Wow.
It's been a significant drop, and
It was never a big,
Now it's nearly nothing.
it was never going to be a big revenue source.
So increases in budgeted expenses in the general fund, we've taken into account increases in cost of goods and services, as well as salary increases per negotiated MOUs. And we'll talk about personnel costs in more detail in a little bit. All right, capital projects. This is just a quick snapshot to give you an idea of the distribution of expenses for upcoming capital projects, all of which will start this coming fiscal year. The two projects anticipated to be completed in 23-24 are the City Hall upgrades and the Dam Road extension project.
These are not Measure V projects.
No.
Nope.
Yeah, previously we had funded or we had budgeted Measure V projects out of this is actually just the capital projects fund. Because of tracking those projects related to the debt, we created a new fund where that money is, and all of those projects will be budgeted, are budgeted, and will be handled out of that other fund.
That's the way to do it, isn't it? Sure.
As mentioned, there are no changes to FTEs. We have realized some cost savings in personnel. We have 2 vacant FTEs in the police department, as well as 1 vacant FTE in public works and 1 960 position in public works. And the cost savings are based on the time it will take to fill those positions anticipated to take. The cost of living increases apply to POA, MMA, CMEA, and management, all 3 of which are at 3%. The salary schedule is in your meeting packet and will be a part of the adoption of the budget. At this time, the unfunded accrued liability estimates for classic employees, both safety and miscellaneous, for 23-24 is $626,000, $626,941. The prepayment would be $606,000, would save us roughly $20,000. What I have learned about these projections is they really are projections. And looking at the numbers last year, the estimates that they provided, that combined, we know that the balances for the PEPRA accounts are small, and last year they combined were estimated to be about $11,000, but the actuals were $1,100. So it went down, 90%, and so that's great when it's a good investment year for CalPERS, but I'm a little bit nervous about what's going to happen over the next couple of years, even with the smoothing that CalPERS does. But it is good news to know that the balance for the PEPRA, safety, and miscellaneous is currently 0. And our balances right now, based on estimates, are classic miscellaneous is roughly $1.5 million, and classic safety unfunded accrued liability balance is roughly $3.9 million, for a total of $5.4 million.
That's the total unfunded liability, 5.9.
Yeah, $5.4 million. That's the estimated right now. So probably old news and already changed, and we just don't know yet.
When we originally, a couple of years ago, we were trying to buy that down somewhat, right?
Well, I mean, we started doing the prepayment because the sooner you pay it, the better. And so we've been doing that. And, I think that's going to help over time. And then, of course, we started paying 100%, as Director Wells mentioned, of the PEPRA tiers, because the balance is so
Eventually,
small.
it's going to go all to.
I mean, and actually their projections with this year's actuarial reports were, it was actually super funded. Like, I don't really know how they do all their calculations, but we paid the amount, 100% of the amount we said they owed. And then the next year they said, well, we actually have a little bit of a credit. But to the extent that we can keep that so small enough that we can afford to pay 100% each year, then on those newer tiers, as the classic are the folks who've been around, were employed before 2013. And so when those retirees happen, everyone will be in the PEPRA tiers. And, we want to try to keep making sure that we don't add to that debt at all.
Okay, moving on to Measure P. You'll see that the gap is $96,118. And that $96,000, the money budgeted in that, the gap in the budget are primarily one-time expenses, including flock cameras for the police department, computer leases, software subscriptions, and other equipment. There are indirect costs transferred to the general fund for overhead as well. Currently, the account balance is roughly $460,000. And after utilizing these $96,000 in fund balance, remaining balance is roughly $366,000. Okay, Measure V, revenue versus expenses. So the Measure V fund is separate, as City Manager Flora mentioned, from the Measure V loan fund. And the debt service and the reserve for the Measure V loan fund are kept in Measure V. So the revenue and expenses are even for the year. The 209.63 that is a gap in what you see in the expenses is actually for the reserve, and it is already in the fund, so it's fund balance.
So
I can't read the numbers.
There's,
Revenue less expenses, what again?
what's that?
What is revenue less expense? What is that? I can't, It's too small
Revenue
to
less
read.
expenses is the 209.63 for, which is the exact amount of the reserve for the Measure V loan fund.
You recall, as part of the financing package, we proposed creating a reserve account, so if there was a dip in sales, like we still gotta make debt payments, and so it's phased in over time, and there's a percentage of revenue each year that we have to allocate to that reserve account.
so that figure up there that's so small is the 209,063.
Yes, apologies for that.
So the total income is 2.8. Did I see that right?
Yeah, well, yeah, roughly.
Or is it 2.6? 2.6 revenue, and the 2.8 is because you have 200,000.
So we still have all of our existing staff positions, normal equipment, all that. And then the difference is, instead of funding what's been, roughly $2 million in projects directly out of there, we're funding 1.5 million, slightly under, for the debt service.
Right.
Is there any big equipment cost projected for next year? Yeah, which is what?
Excavator. That's the plan.
Yeah, we budgeted to, we talked about this a few years back. You'll recall, and never moved forward with it, but Director Leyva and staff feel like it's something that we needed for a variety of the city's projects. And so we did put budget in there for leasing it, which is what we've done before, spread that cost out over a few years. And we would bring the contract back for the council's review and approval specifically for that at a later time.
I'm glad to see you're getting it.
Huh?
I said, I think it's long overdue. I'm glad to see they're getting the excavator.
All right, and looking at gas tax, you will see that revenues have matched expenses. And one of the things that was interesting to me yesterday in the presentation by Michael Coleman was he was talking about, in addition to talking about the constitutional protections for the tax amount and the allocation to local governments, he also talked about the electric vehicles and the impact of moving towards electric vehicles has on
Gas
the
tax.
road, the road maintenance funds. And I didn't realize it, but there is a zero emission vehicle tax that is an annual tax of $100 every year with registration, and clearly that's not enough. So he was, especially compared to gas revenues. So
That's interesting, because years ago, when I was part of the Cal Cities discussions, they were looking at doing instead of doing a gas tax, a vehicle use tax. They would take the EV mileages, and you would just be based on miles traveled.
right, and he talked about that yesterday in using transponder technologies, but
exactly.
the challenge of the privacy issues that brings up.
Okay.
And he also talked about they were looking at the time of purchase of a vehicle where you could just pay for 100,000 miles of use
Use.
on the roads and, just call it good at the beginning of the purchase of the
You
vehicle.
know, just like, for instance, Tesla knows exactly how many miles you have on your car.
But do they
They're
want to tell
tracking
the
you.
government?
Huh?
They track you.
They track me, yeah, every day.
Big brother.
Well, I was looking this up real quick. I can't remember the state or area, but the Federal Highway Administration is doing a pilot project somewhere on implementing that to see how it works.
You know, of course, that's going
This
to
is
happen.
probably going to have to happen at some point. I mean, you would think as a city council member, if a city council member owned multiple all-electric
EVs.
vehicles, that they would voluntarily contribute to the road fund for, yeah.
I haven't been to a gas station in 2 months.
Well, they'd have to get the electric vehicles go a lot further on their charge than what, for me to buy one, so.
Toyota's coming out with one supposedly that's over 600-mile range now.
Wow.
Can't win.
Why don't they just
I
go
want-
back
I'm
to the
waiting for
solar cars
hydrogen.
like they had in the 70s? They
They-
had cars that had the
I want
solar
to plug
on
my
top of them,
hose
and
in
they
the,
went
in the
fine.
tank and away I go.
Charger stations are even
Water
get it
up.
from the sky.
Yeah.
Just serious, but you project 28,000 gas tax revenues, right? Is that, how far down was that from last year? You have any trend?
Did you
Is
look
there
at
a trend already or?
I did not.
I think it's actually slightly up. It's just not up as much as, so actually Michael Coleman that she's talking about actually does the projections for the League of Cities and the CSAC, the accounting organization. And he does them in January and then in May. These projections, the May projections were down from the January projections, but I still believe it's a little bit higher.
And the gas tax will go up 4 cents a gallon July 1st. That will
Awesome.
happen next year.
And we should point out, I mean, we call it gas tax, because that's historically what it was, and it does still include the HUDA, the traditional gas tax. But you'll recall SB1 a number of years ago also included additional vehicle registration fees, which go to this, which would bring in some funds from all electric vehicles as well. And I think there's some increasing phasing in of those fees as well, but that's also included as part of this, even though we talk
All right, so circling back to where we started, again, we have a structurally balanced budget, and by focusing our financial and human resources on our established goals for previous years, council has brought about a cleaner, safer city with improved facilities that citizens and surrounding communities recognize and value. Fiscal year 23-24 proposed budget will allow the city staff to build on these past successes moving into the future. And we have a link to the budget book as well as time for questions and comments.
Thank you very much. Good report.
Yeah,
I
so
like
if
how
there-
everything matched, the revenue to what we needed to
if
budget.
there's any specific questions, hopefully you all had the opportunity to use our Open Hub platform and you can kind of drill down various things. I would point out that there is some type of technical glitch we haven't been able to resolve, that we like to show some historical numbers as part of the budget. And for some reason, when we put them into the story that we have, is those numbers are converting back to 21, 22 is what it's showing. We hadn't been able to resolve it. So if we just put in this year's numbers, it works fine. So that's what we did. But of course, that information is available if you're interested in digging into it. And then, we should turn over to our other department heads. I mean, this isn't a budget that's really that exciting. We had to, when we have all the departments put in their requests, and we had a $2.2 million deficit in the general fund. So It took a bit of
Back to you guys.
Bit of carving.
I had one more
There's
point.
definitely a number of things that they were all wanting that aren't in here at this point.
One more question. But I didn't get that deep into our TOT tax. Is that projected to go up or by significant amount or a little bit or what?
We projected a little bit of an increase. I mean, things have been really increasing over the last few years. I think the last half of last year, we struggled. I mean, the whole county really did on visitors. Council or Vice Mayor Claffey probably could attest to that. But I mean, we're counting on the full lake having a little increase this year in travel, but we didn't project anything too extreme.
Do we think we're catching everybody though?
Well, we do have it.
Yeah. You know,
Tell us more about that. HTU.
well, HDL is a consultant that does our sales tax stuff in there. They also do
TOT.
for vacation rentals.
Good.
And so they have a mechanism. There's a company called Deckard that they use. You may have seen them at some of the conferences.
Yep.
And they
Yeah.
have a
That's what
way
I'm
to
asking.
analyze. You know, if you put a posting on your bedroom or your extra house or whatever, they grab that posting, identify it, and then follow up, and they send a notice on our behalf to them saying, "Oh, these are the rules." Most people like didn't realize that they had to do it because Airbnb or whatever don't tell them. And so they work through that process for us. Most folks that find out what the rules are make a decision just to stop doing it. But there have been some things we haven't really had to take significant enforcement action, but they follow up on that. I mean, I think there's so many changing platforms and people can take it up and down that are we missing some stuff? Maybe, but I don't believe that it has a significant impact on our revenue really at this point. I mean, the bulk of that revenue comes from, you know, our larger hotels. We have, you know, Best Western.
How is their occupancy? Is that still pretty?
Best Western?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's generally around 80%.
That's pretty high for a hotel.
It is. They rely mainly on construction worker type of stuff during the week. And, you know, they're almost full during the week. And sometimes they've struggled over the last year on the weekends. And I think a lot of that probably had to do more with lake activity and that type of thing than just, you know, I mean, we hear a lot of folks that had that issue.
Couldn't launch a boat.
It was very challenging.
So if there would be another hotel, that would go up. That's revenue source would go up.
So what?
Yeah, I mean, with the hotel project that, you know, we have planned, is likely to nearly double our TOT revenue.
And tell me again what the TOT revenue is now projected to be.
I think it's around 400,000. Let's pull it up.
That's 5 million.
Well, that's, you know, that kind of revenue you can plow back into.
Yeah.
$450,000.
So we'd kick it up close to $1 million with the addition of that.
Yeah,
Hotel
it's been a
there.
while since I projected. I think it'll generate probably at least 300,000.
Good.
Anything, Chief Hobbs, Swanson, Ms. Lay, want to add about budget?
No,
The police department has.
No new gadgets?
I mean, there's minimal increases. We moved some things around to some other accounts to kind of keep them more tracked and, you know, a little easier to tell where we're spending the money, but other than that, we didn't do too much.
No big upgrades projected on any
Any what?
big new upgrades on any Anything that?
No, I mean, we have some that we're phasing in right now, but I mean, it's already budgeted for, well, we budgeted for it last year. We have a few things that are.
I did see we have,
right now.
we have $1 million fixing a city hall.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the bids back yet. It's out to bid right now. And that's part of the ARPA funds. But we're expecting it to probably be somewhere in that range. I'm hoping it's not, doesn't come in.
Does that include new chairs for us?
Yeah, they fixed them.
They fixed them.
They fixed them.
Yeah, not all of them. The hydraulics still aren't.
I think that was paid, I think that was a police chief project, wasn't it?
I did a couple of these, but the ones over there, but yeah, if we need to put new shocks in more,
I wasn't calling you out, Chief. That was a thank you for
Don put most of these in, but
other duties as assigned.
So how many openings do you have at the police
Two.
department now?
Two.
Two, and are we planning on, are we recruiting for those?
Oh, yeah, we're in the process of doing that. Yeah, we're always recruiting.
So
Go
what-
academies, trying to do
Budgeting
stuff.
salary savings, we're not, taking our foot off the gas on trying to fill the positions.
Right.
It's just, we realistically don't think that that's going to be possible to fill all of them starting July 1.
Okay,
So
but-
we factored a little bit of salary savings.
But when we look at the parameters required for Measure P and the understanding that there's a trigger that if we hit certain things, Measure P could go away, how are we managing that?
We always
Keeping
make
your eye
sure
on
that, there's the MOE calculation.
Okay,
Always make sure that that's not going to be a
the
problem.
percentage of officers.
Yeah, we gotta
population.
get up about what, 12 more, 10 to 12 more people, so
Yeah.
That's a lot.
we're not getting.
So we're
anything
good.
soon.
We're good.
It will never be there in our lifetime.
Well, I'd love to see it, have that many staffing, at that level, but
I did hear today from Alan that you have a new, I don't know what you call that position.
Well, it's kind of a new assignment. You can
Oh,
talk
for
a
the summer
little
one?
bit about the.
Yeah, for the summer, luckily we got some extra people right now. So we're gonna assign one for the summer, just doing some special enforcement. They're gonna focus mainly on traffic enforcement, the parks, and then shopping malls, areas like that. So the Burns Valley Shopping Mall, the Walmart Tractor Supply area, then the area around foods, et cetera, the health clinic. Just spending extra time in those, walking around, trying to, walk into the businesses, say hello to people, try and keep some of the people out of those shopping malls and parks that none of us would like to see in them to begin with. And then doing some extra traffic enforcement is to work on speed.
Got the officer that's driving around in the car.
No, just a regular patrol car.
I noticed one when I was coming in Burns Valley Mall.
Oh, no, he's gonna be starting. We got an officer back that's been on injury. He came back today. Unfortunately, the officer that got selected to do the special enforcement in the summer, in November, when they did vacation sign up, he has 2 weeks of vacation, or this week and next week.
Right
So
now, yeah.
when he comes back, he will go into that.
We have them make sure that they go around the community center, whether it's him or whoever, in the evenings or early mornings to make sure that the people that are hanging out there.
Evenings will be okay. Mornings, one of the hours he's working, he won't be around then, but it incled in the parks. I mean, it's any city-owned properties. So
I think
senior
that's
center,
a-
the golf.
I think something that we need to, promote, because I think it's an excellent idea.
Yeah, no, it should be good. I think,
Some extra
And he's gonna be on his bike, right?
he's gonna
I like
do
e-bike.
the motorcycle, the electric bike,
E-bike.
and the
Cool.
car. And we
Cool.
kind of tailored the times. We get a little more complaints recently. We've having some things, shopping times where people that have jobs, they get off work and they're going to the shopping areas and they're, seeing some things they don't like. There's, some folks there that
We got you.
we don't want there. So we're trying to tailor it to those.
So is that officer also your homeless liaison?
No.
Different.
But Councilmember Kramer's question about the vehicles, maybe you could just talk a little bit about that. I mean, we're back to using a couple of the Crown Vics right now because of just some of the
Cool.
issues with some broken vehicles and whatnot that were.
Yeah, we lost a vehicle in January that we're waiting for the insurance to settle that one. And then we got a couple another one that has we had the snowstorm, we had a collision, so we're waiting on that one being repaired. And unfortunately, the cost is pretty high on that one. And then we have one that's got an exhaust leak. We've been trying to get in for a while, and I guess it either went in today or it's going tomorrow to get that fixed. So.
Yeah, actually, the one I saw down there, I think was one of the newer patrol cars,
Okay.
We do have the one that we have the SRO in.
Yeah, okay.
But I just wanted, because we don't really see the Crown Vics around town until recently, but
Hopefully it won't
that's
be
why
for
we
too
kept a
long.
couple of them.
And then we have
Just in case.
the 5 new Dodge Durangos we bought. We have one in the parking lot, the other 4 at a storage facility for Enterprise. And we're just waiting on all the parts to getting to the Precision Wireless in Lakeport so they can install those. But it's anticipated we're probably looking at realistically probably the end of summer to get the first couple. So, but then
Chief, is it any of that damage like abuse or just?
the stuff, well, we had the incident where the
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
officer crashed into the church on Mullen, and that car was totaled.
That was in the snow.
No, that one was not. That was the one where a gentleman
Oh.
jumped in front of the road pointing what he thought was a gun at him. Turned out to be a BB gun, but he swerved to avoid running a person over and drove into the church. And then the other main one is the one that was on the snow day where the officer sideswiped Phil Harris's truck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Snowstorm.
mean, just to your comment, I mean, I think overall, the employees do a pretty good job of taking, I mean, that was one of the concerns with the leasing program because, it is all based on some type of value in the vehicle at the end of the lease. But the police department in particular does an excellent job because as part of their evaluation, they have it's their take-home vehicle, and that makes a big difference because they take care of
Oh,
the
I'm
more
aware,
visits.
yeah.
And,
It's one of the great things about a take-home
and then, of
vehicle.
course, the sergeants hold the officers accountable as part of their performance evaluation and inspect the cleanliness of the vehicle and that type of thing.
Good.
And we do have some issues sometimes that arise because of driver issues, and we monitor, look at the cost per an average vehicle for repairs, maintenance, and then some are higher and those get addressed. And we have one that we're working on addressing now.
Thank you for that, Chief.
You're welcome.
There's always those that we used to have trouble with.
Yeah.
That beat cars up.
It's great to see that we have so many capital projects going. I mean,
I'll tell you what, it's great to see, Dirk. Did you look across and see the kids playing in the splash?
Oh, my God, yes.
Isn't that great to see?
I know, but the point I want to make, if we spend that much, another 22 million on infrastructure, that has to, at the end, have an effect on property values, property taxing revenues for us. And I don't know what the time frame of the rates are. I wish you could kind of capture that in a way and put a value on that. If we spend $10 million on roads, property values go up by 10 million or whatever. There has to be
There's a correlation.
We're swimming in the lake as well today.
Yeah, it's fun. I don't know if you've noticed
Oh, no.
that. There's a lot
Yeah.
of swimming in the lake with our.
The
new
beach is being
aeration.
used.
Yeah.
That's great.
I think having that out there where people feel like they're not walking into, collaborative of algae and everything and.
Keeps the
and
freshwater sharks out.
Just the thought of it, just the thought of it is, they're like, yeah.
We
Yeah, 'cause-
capturing any of that on video?
We haven't, and we really haven't done any communication about that. It's just people are noticing that it looks good and they're enjoying.
I think it's psychological that.
Oh, yeah.
It makes it feel safer for somebody to go swimming there.
Well, the beach looks nice. It's very inviting.
No.
It's not July. I won't be
And our
going
park
in, but
looks really nice, better than I've ever seen it. So, I have to give the public works guys.
Absolutely, it does.
There are still some things that probably need to be done, but I'll tell you, it still looks better.
Park looks better than it ever has.
Yeah,
Well,
so,
it's been fun to see. We're all talking about the splash pad and the use of the park, but, our public works guys, you all know, they put an enormous amount of effort into that. They didn't construct it, but, they put the lights in and, whenever there's a concert, they do extra work and it's fun. I was over at the shop last week and, they're really proud of
I was
seeing
gonna say, they
how
see
the
like they're
families
taking
are
extra
enjoying
pride.
it and all that. So,
Yeah.
it's cool.
well, you can always tell when somebody doesn't take pride in their work because it's just not as good. So, I mean, that's the thing is I think people, I've always said all along, the parks look nice in a city. When I go to a city, first thing I look at is their parks. Because to me, that tells me what the city believes in themselves, what the community does. Now that our park looks better, I feel that people will say, oh, we're starting to care about our community because that does represent the care of our community. And it's proven in just the difference in people, how they act, what they're saying, everything has changed, just by doing that park. So I think it was the best
I'm
thing we ever
excited for
did.
some ball fields.
Yeah.
So I was going to save this question, but I might as well bring it up. If we approve Burns Valley today, that's going to increase our park size significantly. We still have Red Bud, the boat ramps and Highlands Park. It's not reflected in this year's budget, but where do we need to get to make sure there's a high level of maintenance on all those facilities?
Need more staff.
Yeah.
So what does that look like in term? Are you thinking, have you thought that far ahead yet, or?
I thought about it, but I feel like we need to do a little bit more training in maintaining the parks to a higher level than we have now versus starting off brand new.
Equipment needs,
Yeah.
like mowers, are you good there? Or
Yeah, we're good.
You think your staff is efficient in how they're doing maintenance?
There
And
could be improvements.
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Thanks for
They're
recommending.
getting there. We're staying on those.
They do need some, let's just take the senior center, for instance, we talked about it, about how they don't look at like the trees and the suckers and stuff around the trees. They don't go through and cut those down. They don't do any trimming. They do the mowing, weed eating. Sometimes they don't quite pay. They did do a good job this last time, but they weren't paying attention to where, like they didn't weed back across the back fence, or they did, they're always they were missing little things. This time they
Well,
did a pretty good job
yeah.
of the mowing and stuff like that, but they still didn't get the suckers off the trees. There's been no trimming there at all, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, and, you don't always see all of this, and I don't always either, but, there's often other things going on, like the water pump at Redbud Park has been down. We had an issue the last couple of weeks, and so, it takes them a lot of time to, they got to get the boat out there and do all the stuff. And so some of these other things,
Get short change.
they get shortchanged
Yeah,
a
that's
little
fine.
bit until they can come back and catch up. And I know it's frustrating for me. I hate seeing stuff like that, but, I would say there's been a market improvement
Oh, God,
over
yeah.
last year for
Absolutely.
sure. And
Absolutely. We
I
have
know-
green.
I know, no doubt that these guys really care and are proud of what they're doing, and I mean, very proud of how much different the grass over here looks in the park.
Looks great.
It's made a huge difference.
So let's, any final thoughts? We got to wrap up and get the
Great job, guys.
hall ready for the meeting.
You feel pretty comfortable with it? Yeah.
with your
With
projections.
the projected budget.
You feel comfortable with it?
I do. And it was a very valuable process for me to see all, that I just have a much stronger understanding of the full picture of the financial situation in the city of Clear Lake. So it was great.
Great.
I was hoping you would have given her a little bit more of a hard time for her first one. but-
Not gonna happen.
Well, we could go through detail to detail, but,
We like her a lot more than we like you.
Understandable.
Should have been here for the first 8 years. We really put them through hell. We did. We made a whole line by line. Our budget hearings were all day
Wow.
because it was so inefficient.
Oh, my goodness.
How are you?
I'm fine, how are you?
I'm moving water right now.
Melissa, how are you doing?
We are reconvening from our budget workshop. We're going to pause. All council chambers located 14050 Olympic Drive in Clearlake, California. Again, it is 6 p.m. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Councilmember Overton. Councilmember Kramer.
Here.
Councilmember Slotin.
Here.
Vice Mayor Claffey.
Here.
Mayor Purdock.
Present. Just to say, Mr. Florida, we need to report out for the budget workshop. No actions taken. Thank you. Councilmember Overton, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. If you don't mind, just remain standing. I just would like to acknowledge and recognize that our community has lost a few of its outstanding members. One in particular, though, I would like to remember tonight is a former volunteer firefighter at the Lake County Fire Department. Captain Ronald Boyd was unfortunately and tragically killed in a motorcycle accident along with his beautiful wife a few days ago. He was a very active member of the Lake County, former Lakeshore Fire Department, responding to calls for service day and night, weekends, ultimately moving on to the Department of Forestry, where he promoted to captain recently in the Humboldt fire or the Humboldt area. So a great loss for our community. And I'd just like you to keep his family in prayer if you would. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Moving on, I have a motion to adopt the agenda. Second. A motion by Councilmember Overton and a second by Councilmember Kramer. All those in favor signify by saying aye or nay. Aye. All right, we have one more.
Melissa, could you have a quick assistance here?
I don't have a voting thing. They're not always in. What did I do? Did I go in the wrong way? That's one of the beginning. Let's start. That's not a good thing. Thank you.
Did you vote?
Got it.
I couldn't get into that. It kept rejecting it.
Oh, I see.
So I went in a different. Didn't realize it made a difference.
Okay.
Now.
We're good.
I'm waiting for the city clerk to rejoin us.
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Thank you very much. Moving on to presentations, item F1. Lieutenant Peterson, do you have a report? Presentation is of the June adoptable dogs. If you're sitting on the aisle, please be careful. We're not sure how this may turn out. Oh, we don't have any. Oh, we do have a pet. Okay, good.
He's been here before. Or she.
Thank you, everybody, for coming in. Who do you
Good
have with you today?
This is Paige. She is a 2-year-old American Pit Bull Terrier mix. She's a very playful girl and she will keep you entertained 24/7. She always has a ball in her mouth and is a pro at playing fetch. She will go all day long if you let her. She also really, really loves water. Her favorite thing to do is dig in the pool, and she'll do that for hours. She prefers to be the only pet in the home, so no other dogs or cats for this one, please. She also enjoys one-on-one cuddle time just as much as playing fetch and playing in the water. She gives great snuggles. She is spayed, microchipped, and up to date on all vaccinations. If you are interested in Paige or any other dogs at the shelter, please come on down. We are located at 6820 Old Highway 53, and we're here every day from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for bringing your pet in. Lieutenant, what's your update?
All right. Guess I'll pull back. Currently, the intake for the year is 111 dogs came into the shelter. 106 have left the shelter, which 41 were sent to rescue, 41 returned to owners, 19 were adopted. And as before, 1 was euthanized, which hasn't changed. And then 4 died or were lost in the shelter care. Live release rate is 99.58%. Current shelter population is 60 dogs. They had a dog that had some puppies, so it went from 58 up. There's 11 cats for veterinary care. There are 4 dogs and 2 cats sent to veterinary clinic. And the return of regular schedule on June 28th at the Clearlake Veterinary Clinic.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Very good. Moving on to item G, public comment. Public comment is a time for any member of our public or visitor to the community to come and address the council on any matter not on tonight's agenda. Remember that we do have to uphold by the Brown Act, so we are not allowed to respond or answer questions, though you may pose them. If we see an opportunity, we might direct you to staff to hopefully answer your question at a later time. At this time, I have no request for public comment, but if there's someone here that would like to address the council, now is your time. You have 3 minutes. Please step forward, state your name, and if you're a resident of the city of Clearlake. Now you did it.
Good evening, guys. How are you? Nice to see everybody. I just had a question, basically concerned about the 4 animals that, thank you. About the 4 animals that died in the shelter. Only 1 was euthanized, which was discussed here before, which is only, you know, it's logical that that's got to happen. What date does that cover, that report that he just gave about the, how many?
As I just indicated, ma'am, we can't answer your questions, but if you'd like to talk, ma'am, if you would just meet with the lieutenant that gave the report, he could answer your questions.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Yep. Anyone else wanting to address council? This is your time. Madam Clerk, anyone on Zoom? Just a second, sir. Anyone on Zoom, Madam Clerk?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Don Clearlake, and I just moved to Clear Lake, and
welcome.
Thank you very much. And I live in a house, and there's vacant lots on both sides of me. And I'm just wondering, how do I go about getting the, who do I ask to get the lots cut down, the grass?
Okay.
Where do I go for that?
Yeah, you could speak with Mr. Lambert, our code enforcement officer supervisor, who's also here sitting next to Lieutenant Peterson.
Okay.
Right here. He could probably give you address, or you can contact the Clear Lake Chamber of Commerce. I believe they have a list of people that can provide that service.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much.
You bet. Anyone else wishing to address the council at this time? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and we will move to the next item, which is our consent agenda. Do we have any changes or wish to pull an item? Anyone on the council?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Is there any public comment on item on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for action. I have a motion by Councilmember Slotin
Second.
and a second by Councilmember Kramer. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda? Aye. Any opposed?
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Thank you. Now moving on to the public hearing. Section I-5, public hearing to consider the appeal of the Planning Commission's decision of April 25th, 2023 for the approval of the environmental analysis CEQA 22-205 in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act and conditional use permit CUP 2022-16 for the Burns Valley Development Project located at 14885 Burns Valley Road, Clearlake, California 95422, further described as assessor's parcel number 026-40. We are reconvening on this item. It was heard at our prior city council meeting. Mr. Flora or Mr. Jones, would you like to get us up to speed?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, council members. So at the last meeting, there was, a number of pieces of information provided. The most important, I think, there was an errata prepared by our council, and so we do have a red line copy of the mitigation monitoring plan based on that errata. And then the one additional thing was the offer last week of being able to the COI voluntarily providing monitors at their expense for areas that were outside the what we consider sensitive areas based on the facts in this case. So we do have a language related to that. I can pass this out. And then I know that Mayor Purdock and Vice Mayor Claffey met with the Coy Tribal Council earlier this week. So, maybe you can provide a report on that. And then just a bit ago, we did receive an additional letter from the Coy that was forwarded to your email. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it or not, but I did print out a few hard copies that we could.
If you could pass those out, Mr. Flora. I didn't have a chance to get that. It is, we were encouraged, Chairman Beltran had offered monitoring of the site for, I believe, some surface artifacts that possibly had been identified. Vice Mayor and I met with the COI. They rescinded that and we're not able to do that. So we are back to this hearing. I'd like to thank Ms. Robinson for helping to facilitate that. And unfortunately, we have what appears to be quite a bit of material to review. Mr. Jones, as I recall, we had closed public comment on this item and had reconvened for deliberation. Is that your recollection?
It is, and you referred to it as public comment. It actually was the public hearing. So we're gonna,
sorry.
We postponed the public hearing, continued till today's date. So I think you should open the public hearing or resume it, and we'll go from there.
Okay, at this point, are we able to, do we need to resume for additional testimony?
Yes.
Okay, and is that testimony to initiate with from the city staff or the plaintiff?
I mean, I don't think city staff have anything additional to
Anything to
provide. I
add?
mean, the errata document that was handed out, or the mitigation monitoring plan The only thing new on that, if you look at the last page, is the specific language of the mitigation measure related to voluntary providing monitoring. The rest of it was all provided in the information last week. So, I think we would just be available for questions from the council. We do have our council on Zoom, and I believe Dr. White might be on Zoom as well if needed. So.
Ms. Robinson, if I could I call you to the podium, please? You handed us you handed us this document to review. Could you give us kind of a high level summary of what we're seeing here? It should be on.
There we go.
Okay. Oops.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for meeting with us on Monday with tribal leadership. So your comment letter from today essentially addresses the new materials and events from the last hearing. So we're all up to date, right? And so it just writes down that there was a misunderstanding about we were not trying to offer to pay for tribal monitoring on the project during construction. Chairman Beltran was trying to reiterate the offer to pay for monitoring and cultural resources survey on the site because it had been disked to resurvey it. So I think he thought that's what you were asking. It honestly was confusing. You saw after the hearing, I was thinking, okay, we're going in this direction. So we got that cleared up. We also stated at the hearing that, that kind of thing requires a vote of tribal council. Just like you as mayor, you would not make these decisions without talking to your council and voting. So same thing for how this government works. So we've clarified that. We've also addressed the 41 pages of materials which were provided at the hearing. So we have a very strong disagreement as to whether the substantial evidence standard under the fair argument has been met here. That's legalese, but what it means in plain English is we have lots of evidence. We've been giving the city meaningful evidence since February of 2022. We heard once again, last week that the city did not think there was the evidence. So we've spent the last week since the hearing was reopened. This was not some grand plan, but since the door was open, it's our job to walk through it. So since we heard so strongly that the city still does not think our evidence is sufficient, we went back into our records and we've provided you with more evidence. So the key documents are in the binders in front of you. One of my colleagues, Nav, will bring up a printed binder for you of evidence. And we've also submitted for the Tribal Cultural Resources confidential appendix, Robert Geary's consultation file for this project, which has some very interesting material in it, including the fact that I just recently discovered the city was actually paying for tribal monitoring on the entire project site during phase 1 of this project. So if y'all could just go back to what you were doing anyway, and we have receipts, like literal receipts of, the invoices and so on for that. That's all in the record now. We've also added to the record materials such as the reports. No, Dr. White's not here. Dr. White, his reports cite other cultural and archaeological reports. We've given you those actual reports because they cite, for example, Mr. Geary's lineal descendancy. So when we say it's oral history of evidence of what tribal cultural resources are here and why it's important, just so it's very clear to everybody, his great-great-grandfather spoke to Mr. Giffords, who's an archaeologist who wrote it down. Dr. White, the city's expert, says, here's what's here based on Gifford's report, interviewing Robert's great-grandfather. So we've tried to put evidence like that in the record to make it clear when we say it's oral history as evidence. We're getting it from the same people your experts relying on, except with the addition that he speaks the language and has the cultural context to interpret that information more fully. think those are the main points. Bill, am I missing anything? Comment letter? Okay. Yeah, so that's what's in the comment letter. That's what we'll provide here today. And then if you'll give us the grace of giving us 30 minutes this time like we did last time. We're here again to explain again, and hopefully tell our story even better so that you hear it this time. So
Thank you,
we
Ms.
would
Johnson.
appreciate that opportunity if you can do it.
Let me ask for a point of order, Mr. Jones.
I mean, I think it's within the mayor's discretion. If there's new information that wasn't presented last time, certainly have.
Is this new information or a revisit of what's been presented?
We're not going to just say the same thing. It's similar points, but told with more detail. And also there's some new information as well. So we'd appreciate the time if you can.
Well, yeah, in the interest of cooperation and a spirit of, common interest, please proceed.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're having some trouble with that.
Yeah, it's all right. How's this? Okay. This, you don't have something that's gonna fall off of here. All right. Good evening. How is everybody doing? I'm Dino Beltran. I am the vice chairman of the Koi Nation of Northern California. As you all know, we're a sovereign nation. We operate as a government. As Holly stated, everything has to be voted on and decided on, just like the way you folks operate your government. We've been here on this land, including the Burns Valley Sport Complex, for instance, time immemorial. We have 2 known sites there, Kulai and Kolono-Padai. Have been submitted to the Native American Heritage Commission 8 years ago as sacred sites. We have not told you no. We want this to happen. But from a moral standpoint, from an environmental and social justice issue here, it's not just a CEQA issue. It's an environmental justice issue, a social issue, it's a cultural issue, it's a religious freedom issue. So with that, I would like the public to know that we're behind this project. We are going to start reaching out to you so you understand us, because we're not getting through here. We're going to reach out to you. We're going to invite you to come and visit with us so you understand our emotional standpoint to this issue. We support this project. We have not said no. We want them to follow the law. There's also a moral aspect to it. Integrity, lacking. All this right here, temporary. It's temporary.
Mr. Beltran, if you could address the council, appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So with that, and moving forward, we would love to go ahead and get your addresses, get your numbers, so you can understand what we're talking about here.
Address the council, Mr.
Oh, I'm doing everything.
I understand that, but we're the trier of fact tonight. So we appreciate we are the trier of fact tonight, like a
Okay.
judge
Okay.
hearing your case.
Okay. So we're very grateful that a date has been set for training after a year of asking for it. Very grateful for that. It's about time. That'll be on June 30th. What's the matter?
I'm listening, sir.
Okay. So I'm glad that you've got your consultant doing that in tandem with us and our representative. We have invited the other tribes. The other tribes are willing to be here. I forgot to get you on that, Alan. Lisa can forward that to you. She responded. She was happy that we did that. So at the end of the day, just want to let you know, as Holly has stated, we are not going to pay for monitoring. You're paying for monitoring for plumbers to be there. I mean, you're paying for plumbers to be there in their capacity. You're paying for electricians to be there in their capacity.
our capacity and all the training and everything we've spent money wise for our people to be on board in a professional manner to respect the rights of our ancestors is set forward. So I ask you to take advantage of that, of our expertise, because we are just going to keep where we are. So at the end of the day, I hope you reconsider, because this isn't a legal issue so much as it is a moral issue, because I'll guarantee you what, if I had an idea that your ancestors might be buried in a certain area, I'm going to do everything possible to make sure that they would be handled by the right people, by you and your people, to make sure they would be handled with the utmost of integrity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beltran.
Hello, we and Rob Koibach. My name is Rob Morgan. I'm a resident here in Lake County. I'm also a member of Koi Nation. I am Koi. And again, I'm here to tell a little bit of my story. And last time I started fumbling around a little bit because I started thinking of everything, of all our history. And I really can sit up here for hours and talk about our history. Our history that goes back over 10,000 years, 15,000 years, as stated by Greg White, 16,000. That's our history. That's what we have here. And it's here within these soils. Throughout the city, we have little representation. You don't really find anything that says Koi, that says anything about our tribe here, about Elam. No, there's very little everywhere you go, and there's names that are all over the city. Let's talk about Anderson Marsh, a state park that was purchased because of the Native American archaeological sites that are there. That's what it was purchased for. But yeah, it's called Anderson Marsh. You go out to those trails, it's called you got the trails, you got Anderson Flat, you got Lewis Ridge, Slater Island. These are all names of people that's been here, of the Slaters, of the Andersons. But we don't talk about the traditional names. We don't talk about, how we called Cache Creek, Badai, or we called the island Yo, or Koi Island. Today we know it is Indian Island, but it's Koi Island. That was our center. That was our political center. These are the real names, but if you go around, you see Austin Park, if you go around the county, you see Kelseyville. And right now what we're talking about is the Burns Valley complex, sports complex. A relative came here last week and he told the history of that. He told the history of who Bern Brown really was, about him indenturing his grandma. That's the name that you guys are putting on this. That is who that is. That's what's related to that. Just like with Kelsey, I have family members that carry that name as well. There's Kelsey's, there's Salvador's, Clifford Salvador, that was on Badai. He carried that name. His father was kidnapped and he was gone for 25 years in the Bay Area before he came back. This is the history that we have. My great-grandfather took part of going to the gold mines. He was one of the few that made it back. That Ben Kelsey and them, they took him on that. That's our history, and that's what we're trying to protect. So, I heard something in the last meeting was we're doing our part. With the misunderstanding that we had, we thought we were talking about the survey. That we would be willing to go over there and survey the top layer after the disking that took place. That's what we thought we were talking about. But it's Somebody said that we did our part by covering that cost. And now we could get our name on there. If we want a name, now we could get our name. Our history, my ancestors, they already paid that price. Us getting chased off these lands, Cool Badai and Cool Koi, off of Badai, on down road, them getting chased out by Paul Lewis, Lewis Ridge, Paul Lewis, all these names, Slater Island. We were chased off of these lands. I kind of think that we already paid the price. And all we're asking is to be a part of this, to continue being part of this. We were already part of it throughout the whole beginning. Let's finish it off. Let's be the example for everybody that's watching. And let's not continue this. Let's not continue what this county has already been through. I heard that there's a book that tells of what not to do. This is what you don't do. A relative passed not too long ago from Sulphur Bank, from cancer. How many people have died from cancer in that area? You know, this is what we're facing, historical trauma. I see it all the time. I deal with it. I deal with it with my own kids, my own family. And this is proven, this is scientifically proven that historical trauma gets passed down. And that's what we're dealing with. You know, we're still dealing with it. It wasn't that long ago. It may seem like a lifetime and forever. It really wasn't that long ago. But I just wanted to say those few things and, you know, just to let everybody here know, you know, why we're here. We're here. We're not asking for much. This is a multi-million-dollar project. This is one of the biggest projects that you guys have done here. You know, so Greg saying how extensive his work was, it makes sense. It makes sense. I've worked with Greg side by side for many years and I learned a lot from him. And one thing I did want to bring up is he said those sites are between 3,000 and 5,000 years old. And from my understanding, he's been looking for that time frame from 4,000 to 6,000 years throughout the world. There's a missing piece that we've been trying to find as humans that fit in this timeline of what he's saying. This timeline is for that site. And it's not easy to find sites. He may have dug a lot of holes, but there's a lot of ground there. We just want to be able to be there and pick up the pieces. That's all we're doing. We're not trying to stop you guys from anything, but we're picking up the pieces of what's going to be left behind.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob, for that powerful and personal testimony. So that's what we mean when we're talking about oral history. He knows his history, right? And he's living it right now. And you all are part of history too, right? Someday this will be history. So I want to take what Rob was talking about and lay the groundwork for what Robert Geary is going to share with you. Put this in an environmental justice context. So I'm going to start with the definition of environmental justice in State Law Government Code 65042.12 subdivision E, for those of you following along at home. So the definition of environmental justice under state law, environmental justice means the fair treatment of people of all races, cultures, and income with respect to the development, this is a development, adoption, implementation, this is implementation of a development, and enforcement, certainly an issue here, of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. So what does that mean in practice to enforcement agencies? So this means that when the city applies CEQA, which is an implementation of the city's general plan, which has an environmental justice requirement in it from the governor's planning of, excuse me, it's been a long night, from the governor's office of planning and research, where I used to work and worked on these general plan guidelines. It requires environmental justice consideration by local governments. There's actually large amounts of grant funding available for environmental justice communities and communities doing EJ work. Your city manager is very talented at bringing in grants, so this is actually an opportunity potentially. So when the city is making its decisions, we would urge you to consider an environmental justice lens to your planning decisions. including development and implementation of environmental laws such as CEQA that says you've got to treat the tribe fairly. So taken from the Attorney General's Office of Environmental Justice website, quote, CEQA requires government agencies in California to consider potentially significant environmental impacts on communities already burdened by pollution when reviewing and permitting new projects. So when we talk about pollution, there's, the mine, right? That's a good example. There are other types of environmental harm. One of the types of environmental harm is cultural, religious harm. So when we talk about sites have been bulldozed, and then you've got this archaeological report that says, oh, don't worry, there's no site here. I would refer you to page 6 of the errata of the memo provided by your CEQA attorney last week, which talks about Dr. White's report, which in turn talks about the Pomo School. So here, I'm just going to draw all these threads together for you. The Pomo School site is a significant site. We're talking burials, we're talking human remains, we're talking evidence, right? Indisputable evidence. City Hall, where we are now, used to be a shopping center. And what was it before that? A significant tribal cultural resource site. And your own experts report says that cultural materials, this was in actually the additional materials received last week, cultural materials from both those sites are on this site. So when we're talking about the buffer zone, right, we've got, the city has already agreed to cap what the archaeologist says is an intent of cultural resources. Thank you. That's a change to the project. We appreciate it. But the tribe's saying that they agree that the project redesign is better than the old design. Yeah, we do, right? That doesn't mean that all tribal cultural resources have been fully identified. It does not mean that they have been fully mitigated in a culturally appropriate manner as required by AB 52. So we've talked before, multiple hearings about the need for tribal monitoring outside of this buffer zone of the area that archaeologists thinks is most important. Here's why. Those cultural materials, which our own expert says came from the Pomo School site, came from this very earth we're on now. Those are on this project site. There are tribal cultural resources at the surface level. We found them. They're documented with photographs in our experts report. And so, as Rob was saying, they just want to be there to pick up the pieces. So we have this legacy of tribal cultural resources being desecrated through development. And I want to acknowledge those aren't decisions you all made, right? They may have been, some of us, our relatives generations ago, but you didn't do it, not personally. So, we're not saying you did anything wrong. We're saying, as you said, Mr. Mayor, as the trier of fact, right? You're now in a decision-making role. You do have authority now. And the question is, what are you going to do with it, right? We cannot fix the wrongs of the past. We cannot go back and heal genocide, but we can take an environmental justice approach and a healing approach to the decisions we make now, today as a community. So the city is still saying, including in the documents we received last week, there's no TCR impact because they're not intact, and therefore they're not significant. But what that memo fails to do is quote the rest of that very same sentence in the statute that says, when the city applies those historic register criteria, you take into account the significance of the resource to the tribe. And we're here telling you as clearly as we can, this is a significant resource to the tribe. Those cultural materials that have been redeposited on this site, that still means something. It still matters to them if there could be human remains in there, as your experts report says. So an environmental justice approach here says the city takes into account the historic cumulative impact and considers the resource value of these resources to the tribe. What this tribe wants, it's far more humble than what most tribes are asking for around the state. I know because I represent other tribes. You would not want to see me in that context, but I defer to the tribal council. And what they want is to be at the table for a respectful, meaningful consultation on tribal cultural resources. We tried, y'all came back to the table. Thank you for that. We didn't quite get there. I think we will in future projects, I hope. And to be there on the construction site to monitor. So again, they can pick up the pieces and just move those TCR out of the way to a reburial location. And then your project can continue. So the tribe does support healthy recreation in the community. Wellness is a big focus of Dino Beltran in particular. It just shouldn't come at the expense of continued desecration. So back in the day, those sites were desecrated and their materials got moved here. And so now that's the question for you. Are you gonna keep going? Are you gonna double down on what happened in the past that's painful to this tribe's culture and their religion, and it's causing environmental justice harm? Or are you gonna make a new decision, right? Take a new path. And you have that opportunity.
Good evening, Mr. Gary.
Hakate mai okate Council Weekend, Robert Gary Yahake Alembak. How are you today? My name is Robert Gary and I'm from Alem Yahake Tawalkit Khoi Nation, Yahake Habemetal. I work for Habemetal and Khoi. So I'm talking to you today, I think, with regards for more understanding, I think, of what this issue really causes. We're looking at an environmental justice issue and a social justice issue. When it came to this to this project specifically, talking with the city construction manager, the importance of it, where its location was, there were big concerns. I followed AB 52 consultation process and regulation, was asked about any concerns, and we consulted. During that consultation with both two representatives that we had at that, I let them know that we did have concerns. We consulted at that time. We told them that we wanted monitors out on site. Phase 1 started. We had projects for the Burns Valley Phase 1 portion of it. Found items outside of the buffer zone, probably at the most farthest extent from the buffer zone, found items. And so with that said, consultation was talking about the project's entirety. We didn't have a monitor agreement set in place. This was something that was held up at the city manager's position, that he was taking a look. We have this all in the documentation that is being provided to you. So one of the things is just to make sure and know that items were found. We have monitored this project out of the buffer zone. We did find items. There is an invoice. We did training. All of this had already happened. And so we wanted to provide that information and letting you know that it was there. Obviously, if it's even okay to monitor if someone else is going to pick up this bill. That's the take on this. The tribe is there to make sure that it follows CEQA under environmental justice, to make sure that the process is followed, to make sure that we're consistently making sure that the tribal cultural resources are protected. And that's what we did on the first portion of it. Didn't stop it. We were there. It got completed. Second phase comes in, we can do the same. One of the things that we discussed in consultation was just the sensitivity of it. Not only that things were found, not only that we had Dr. White's report of everything that he brought back to the table, but also the new things that he himself found in his survey. And this made it even more concerning. And so this is the reason why that the tribe is coming back and saying, we need to be out there to be able to move those. The operators, they're not trained to know what to look for. The contracted archaeologist is not going to be on site. So this becomes an issue, an environmental issue, because tribal cultural resources are a part of the environment. Discussed in consultation. So we're talking about cultural material, sensitive cultural material. And we're talking in what was presented at the last meeting about the archaeological sites or redeposit of soils from other sensitive sites. From here, there were two that were done by, I believe, Malden, which Dr. White referred to last week, his report. And then Dr. White came out and actually did an update and expanded the actual sensitivity of an archaeological site. In that report, it talks about the sensitivity of what's there. It talks about the possibility of human remains in the soil. It talks about not knowing, but the integrity of what was in the soil of this area of the soil that was taken possibly over to the sports complex. Then we talk about Homo School, soils that were taken from Homo School and brought over into this area. Still highly sensitive material. When these materials are taken from one place to another, and we're going to continue to go to that place, this is cumulative impacts. It's going to continue after time, project after project. It's not going to go away. These are social justice issues for the fact that this is not the only time, and this is a form of erasure, this is not the only time a form of erasure happened to this tribe. Back in 1957, there was a settlement that was down called Badai on the other side of the bridge over in Clearlake. There was a realtor who actually was arrested because he actually destroyed the houses of the tribal members that lived there. And there were burials that were there. This was a known site. The realtor was actually interviewed, and his quote was that if they built their houses back, if he knew that they would have built their houses back, that he would have burned them, their houses down. But instead, he just ran a cable through the window and actually pulled it down with his truck. They were off. They were taken off. From that day to this, there's been no Khoi people back at that place, a form of erasure. Today, we're doing the same thing. When we're wiping out a cultural site, a sacred site, from all the evidence that I provided in consultation and in every one of these meetings about a tribal cultural landscape, tribal cultural resources that are on this area, that your contracted archaeologist has proven, that the information that I brought to the consultation has proven, and we're still gonna go forward and erase the indigenous community. In where I ask, how does this affect us? It's a continuum of erasure. It's a justice issue for a race of people that were the first people that were here. And so these are the things that I'm asking that we change. Just like the attorney said earlier, that we're not blaming anyone here. This was before our time. It's our opportunity to make change, to follow new law that gives us the opportunity to save what footprint that we have left here in Lake County, and hopefully to establish a good working relationship and to see inclusion of the tribe that is originally from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well, Mr. Flora, do we have any information from the city? Oh,
Why don't you, we'll finish all the public comment. To the extent there's anybody else who wants to make public comment.
I was asked for 30 minutes and we're about almost at 40.
Right, but there may be non-Khoi members who want to make public comment.
Understood. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Up here, my name is Nabgurm. I'm up here on behalf of Chronic, and here today to present additional substantial confidential evidence of tribal cultural resources at the sports complex site. A USB was provided to the city clerk with information that could not be included in this binder. And another copy of this USB of that USB is also in this binder again, but just wanted to submit additional substantial tribal cultural resources at the site. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is William Chisholm. I'm one of the counsel for the Khoi Nation, and I will make this very brief because I know our time is running down, if not out. We submitted to you today a letter, a supplemental letter talking about what had been submitted last week. And I would just like to make 3 quick points with that, and certainly urge you to read that as well as the supplemental declaration by Mr. Geary. First, you received today from the city manager a list, the errata addendum. We've taken a look at that. There are laws under CEQA that if you do something beyond mere clarification, the M&D needs to be recirculated. This goes beyond that. The matters that are stated there are not just simply clarification. SECR requires that it be recirculated before there's any adoption. If the council is prepared to move forward with adoption, as been told many times, the tribe submits that there really must be monitoring. And I would just point out, city decides to build a project. They find that there are impacts to wildlife. They don't call the Sierra Club and say, we think there might be mitigate impacts to wildlife. If you want to mitigate it, come on. Otherwise, we're going to go forward with the project. That's essentially what the tribe's been told. There might be impacts to resources, but if you want to protect them, you've got to come on and deal with it, even though it's the city's project. We submit that's not appropriate or the way CEQA operates. We would submit that there, in all of this, is substantial evidence that there is the need for an EIR. Courts take a very liberal view of when an EIR is required in lieu of just a mitigated negative declaration, which has been presented here. And among other things, it's not your job to weigh the evidence when you're with a mitigated negative declaration. You only do that if there's an EIR. We're not at that point. And I would just point out too, if you recall last week, sitting right over there was Dr. White. And Dr. White, in his rebuttal and his response to what the tribe has presented, and he's the expert the city relies upon, very forthrightly said, I'm an expert in archaeology, history, culture. I'm not a tribal resource expert. That's where you look to the members of the tribe to see what the tribe considers a tribal cultural resource. Not me, Dr. White. Not. So I would urge you, listen to the tribe, listen to what they have said, and listen to your own expert who said defer to the tribe. And also urge, if you're prepared to go forward, I just ask you to urge you and ask you to think how defensible you think your MND is going to be when your own expert has said, well, no, the tribe is the expert, not me. How valuable is it to rely, as has been done, on that expert? So I will just wrap this up very quickly and again, indicate that we want the project to move forward, but it has to be done in compliance with CEQA. Short-circuiting CEQA is not the way to get the project done. It'll only cause more expense and delay, which isn't good for the community. It isn't good for the tribe. It isn't good for the residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I would agree that I think reasonable time to present the appeal. So I think now would be time to open it up to the rest of the public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. As our representative has recommended, if there's a member of the public who would like to speak to council on this item, you have 3 minutes. Please step forward. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Val Nixon. I'm not a member of the tribe. I am the president of the Lake County Land Trust. I'm not here representing the land trust, but the land trust itself hires monitors as we restore wetlands. We put it in our budget because we think it's the right thing to do. It's not that we're required to. So my hope is as you are changing ancestral lands, that you will find that the right thing to do would be to hire monitors from the tribe. Thank you.
My name is Tom Nixon, and I feel completely underdressed tonight, looking at you gentlemen in your suits. Anyway, I want to tell you a story quickly. I won't take very long. Many years ago, when I was a ranger at Anderson Marsh State Historic Park, I had the privilege of working with a scout leader named Dick Freeborn, who we all know was one of the famous people of this county. And Dick said to me at that time, he said, I will never prosecute someone who finds an arrowhead at this park. And I go, wow, he said, no, finding an arrowhead is like mom, apple pie, and a girl next door. It's what everybody does. They just take arrowheads. And I go, well, okay, that's probably one of the reasons this park is here, is this old ranch house, this marsh, and protect these Indian sites here. So many, many years later, we had written a couple of citations finding people looting in the marsh. And I got a call from Judge Freeborn. He said, what do you want to do as a bail schedule? I got a case in front of me and we have no bail for this particular looting of these ARC sites. And I said, well, Judge, I don't know, but I'll do this. I'll call Mendocino County and Sonoma County and find out what they do. And I'll call you back. So I called them both up, and one was more expensive than the other one for the bail. And I called Judge Freeborn back and I said, I don't know what you want to do. This is Sonoma County. This is Mendocino County. Why don't we cut it down the middle and make Lake County this bail? And he said, sounds like a good one, Tom. And that's a big step from Judge Freeborn telling me that he would never prosecute anybody for arrowheads here. But then all of a sudden he's calling me to find out what we should set as the bail schedule for this particular offense. So we've made a lot of progress here. I have nothing but the complete respect for so many people up here that I already know and I work with over the years. Some of you I'm getting to work with more, but I also have a tremendous amount of respect for these people over here. Koihi Nation. I work with a lot of different Native Americans in my career, and I found them to be pretty straightforward people. From what I'm hearing from Dino, they're not opposed to this project. They want to proceed. They just want to be part of the process. And part of the process is legitimizing compensation. So that's really what this is about. Legit, from my understanding, and I don't know the ins and outs. I got asked to be here a couple hours ago. So I've come before you on my way to kicking in the country in my shorts in front of all you with your suits on. And I'm telling you that this is about compensation as I agree. And I think you should pony up. And that's my 2 bits. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Hello, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, staff. Erin McCarrick, Clearlake. So things obviously got off the rails at some point, right? And even coming in from an outside perspective, which is odd saying from an outside perspective as a planning commissioner in September 2022, but we were presented with this case that had been going on for quite some time. And it just seemed like there was a lot of different voices, a lot of things going on, right? So what does that mean for the present? That means cutting to the heart of what it is. And I think last Thursday, there was some miscommunication, but last Thursday still cut to the heart of what needed to happen. So there's still the opportunity for that. And we're in the present right now. And as you heard from the past speakers, is there's an opportunity here. And there's also the reality of AB 52 being here. And in reality, most likely expanding in the way that California tends to expand things like that. So we're here, and we're also in a place where we're doing community conversations, right? We're talking about diversity, inclusion, respect. I mean, the council is recognizing LGBTQ, which is near and dear to my heart. So how do we move forward? How do we become inclusive? How do we set the tone for all sides to come together and talk to each other? In the cannabis industry, there's the blessing and a curse of we have a lot of regulations. And one of those blessings is that we get to learn how to conserve more water, learn how to do best practices, reach out to the ag community and find out how to do those best practices. Supervisor Sabatier smashes us together all the time and says, figure it out, work together. So there's so many ways to work together. And in the cannabis industry, a lot of us, myself included, reach out, even if you're already cleared through CEQA, reach out to the tribes to get an additional monitoring to just triple check that there's nothing sacred there, right? And the tribe is more than happy to do that and very responsive. So if Clearlake is in a renaissance and it is doing a lot of good things, which it is, this is a great opportunity to show how to work together, find out what it is. If it is a budget thing, how much is it going to cost to do the monitoring? Is there a cost sharing? Is there, what is it? What is it that's there? I think it's a great way to set an example and to increase the conversation about who has been here, what tribes have been here. The splash pad integrates tribal imagery and consultation there. So yeah, thank you so much for the time. And I hope that there is opportunity for growth. There's a little bit, 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Phil Harris, city of Clearlake for many years. I'm kind of back and forth now, but just wanted to give a little perspective from myself here. I've been very much involved in the promotion of the concept of the sports complex. I did coach for 15 years and I developed a lot of really close relationships with the children over the years. And I see there's a desperate need for that. Obviously, this is where we came to the location where we are now. I've also been here, like I said, of 45 years. That location has been, manipulated many times over the years. There's no doubt about it. I've also been one of the stronger voices when I was on the council about the need for representation for the indigenous populations here. I think that's always been something that's been near and dear to my heart. Many of the children that I coached over the years were from the Elam colony, and they're still very, very dear to my heart. They always will be. I think that aside from the monitoring concept, definitely being inclusive with naming the different components of the facility and maybe the fields on the facility, that should be some inclusion there. I firmly feel that there should be some inclusion there as far as some design ideas that would represent. And then possibly there would be even some contributions made from the community to support something like that. I know that my corporation would do that, and I think that others would as well, because it's very important that they're represented. But from the monitoring standpoint, I think that it was expressed the most by saying it's a form of compensation, and it does lean towards a cash grab kind of a concept. And if that's the purpose of it, is to represent the Koine Nation, I think that that's wonderful. And if there is a need to a genuine need to have somebody on site for that, then that needs to be met. But if it's just a kind of a compensation type of a way, I think that they could be more compensated in being well represented by the complex. And I think that they should be. They should be represented in everything we do in this community, because it was their home first. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, anyone on Zoom wishing to speak?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Floor.
Well, the only thing, I think the clerk received a comment from the school superintendent earlier that she wanted to share with the council. You want to read that, or you want me to?
Yes, thank you. Earlier, we received an emailed comment, a message of support for the Burns Valley Sports Complex and Recreation Center from Becky Salato. Mr. Mayor, council members, and city manager, on behalf of the Konocti Unified School Board, staff, and most importantly, students, I would like to express our support and gratitude for the Burns Valley Sports Complex and Recreation Center project. I understand it is a huge undertaking for our city, and I'm extremely proud that as leaders of our community, you have the courage and progressive thinking to take on this project. It is clear evidence of your support for our youth and the healthy progress of our community. I truly appreciate your efforts of honoring and preserving our past without it being at the expense of our youth and future progress as a successful community. I look forward to a continued partnership with the city in support of our youth and the many positive opportunities the Sports Complex and Recreation Center will bring for our students. Signed, Becky Salato.
Okay, excuse me. I guess just kind of kick it back to the council. I mean, our council is on Zoom, and if you have any questions about sort of the allegations around obligation for recirculation of the
document.
Yeah, I would like to
think
hear about that,
He
Mr.
can
Fleur.
address those for you. We would like to start there.
Yes, please. Let's start there.
Sure. This is Andrew. Oh, go ahead. This is Andrew Scanchi with Danny Brand. I'll respond to the comment letter that was submitted this afternoon from the tribe. The three main points. One was the recirculation of the mitigated negative declaration. On that one, the allegation is that these measures were done to reduce potentially significant impacts. That's why they were added. I disagree. All of the measures that were added were to strengthen the project. They were not needed to reduce significant impacts. They were added to further ensure the impacts would be less than significant, but the impacts would still be less than significant without those mitigation measures. Therefore, recirculation would not be required. Another point in that letter was that NEPA, the city needed to comply with NEPA, that's the National Environmental Policy Act. We responded to that last time, but the short response is that NEPA is something that federal agencies comply with, not state agencies. So the city would not be an agency approving a NEPA document. And then I guess the other point made in that letter, which was mostly highlighted in the testimony today, is tribal cultural resources. And I can, if you'd like, I can just remind you of the definition of tribal cultural resource in the statute. The main point being a tribal cultural resource is a resource determined by the lead agency, that's the city here, in its discretion and supported by substantial evidence to be significant pursuant to criteria set forth in subdivision C of section 5024.1. That section talks about what qualifies as a historical resource in California. And then that section goes on to say, in applying the criteria set forth in that section, for the purposes of this paragraph, the lead agency shall consider the significance of the resource to a California Native American tribe. So again, the standard is the lead agency has discretion to make that determination, and it is based on the standards for a historical resource in the state of California with consideration of the tribes, the significance of the resource to the Native American tribe. Those are the main points. I'm happy to answer other questions for you.
Thank you. Any questions for council? Seeing none. Mr. Fleur or Mr. Jones, anything further?
Later. I mean, I don't think so, unless, I mean, it's my listening to some of the comments from the public. I mean, clearly there's not a real deep understanding on what mitigation measures are actually in the CEQA document. I mean, it sounds like there's an assumption that this project doesn't include any tribal monitoring, which it does. And of course, there's a cap and fill of the sites to avoid any impacts at all. So that's the most important part here. But, you know, I know the council knows because we've been through this. You know, this project started 2.5 years ago, started immediately with communication and consultation with the tribe back then. But if there's anything that you feel like we need to go over again or whatever, just let us know.
Vice Mayor.
City Manager Fleur, could you also just remind us on the conditions of approval? Because I think that came up a little bit in conversation here, and I think that has been addressed.
Yeah, I mean, there were several conditions of approval. There are, you know, so the process in CEQA, we do the mitigation measures, which are intended to reduce any potential impacts to less than significant. Those are also included in conditions of approval for a project. There were some additional conditions of approval that were added for this project after consultation, I guess, back in October of last year. that we didn't believe were related to an environmental impact, but had agreed to do. And so, I mean, naming came up a number of times this evening. And so one of those conditions simply says that we will organize an item for the city council to consider naming related to this project. So there's several other ones, but that's the main one that seemed like it came up. And so that is included as part of the recommendations around this project, but not, it's not a, we don't believe under CEQA it's mitigating environmental impact, but something that the council could choose to do if they would like. So.
Thank you, Mr. Floor. And for clarity, and because, we, the city didn't present this evening, we presented in the previous meeting. Would you take a couple of minutes, please, and just give a high level overview or summary of the project, what tribal resources we have used for monitoring or what monitoring we've done in the project, and that I believe our staff has been trained to look for tribal cultural resources, which is evident in other projects where we've identified things and immediately called when those artifacts were identified. Just I think for those here tonight and answer some questions of those who spoke.
Yeah, well,
I know.
So, I mean, we look at the mitigation measures related to this project in several layers. So, this is a project where there are tribal cultural resources on this site. There were a number of reports over the years about different things being there. And so, that's why within a few weeks of actually purchasing this property, we worked with Dr. White to begin his cultural resources survey. And so 2 sites were identified at this location. Those 2 sites, according to Dr. White's analysis, were, I think he characterizes like sort of temporary housing sites. So these weren't permanent village sites, but along, I think, some of the creek area that maybe used to be there, that type of thing. And those sites are buried between 18 and 24 inches below the existing surface. And so once we got that information, we worked that into the design. So the design of the project, I guess you did ask for that. So just the high level overview. This would be a replacement of the 3 baseball and softball fields that are currently at Redbud Parks. There would be those soccer fields, and then an indoor recreation center, somewhere between 15 and 20,000 square feet. And then there's also the city's public works shop, and that facility would include some police evidence storage. So those are kind of the parts of this project that are included. So that was all redesigned so that we could ensure that we would cap the with culturally sterile soil above the elevation that's there now at least 6 inches. There would be no penetrations below the existing grade. No, I mean, even tree plantings and that type of thing would not happen above these sites. Now, you'll recall that. So that was kind of the initial mitigation measure proposal that was recommended. Through further consultation with the tribe, there was some feeling that maybe this was one larger site rather than 2 smaller sites. Dr. White is adamant that he doesn't believe that's true. There were a number of ground probes that happened in the area that with the COI's involvement, including between those 2 sites, was trenched, and there was no evidence of any intact buried deposits in that area. However, in an effort to accommodate the tribe's concerns, well, I should step back. Even the tribe has acknowledged that, avoiding impacts is the most important thing. And avoidance, of course, is the sort of, highest priority under CEQA as well. And so capping and filling the site, really meets that standard. But we know there's the concern. So we agreed to providing monitoring for placement of the fabric and the cap and any work above those sites and 100-foot radius around the border of those sites. So then we further agreed, based on the tribe's concerns, to include tribal monitoring of the area between the two sites. So, and then there was also concerns. There used to be a creek commonly referred to as Miller Creek that doesn't exist on this site anymore. However, because of concerns related to possible connection to that we would provide monitoring along the creek. The 100-foot area is kind of the standard that we've used over the years in that. But and while there has been, an arrowhead or a piece of obsidian found on the surface in that area, as you all know, this is very common throughout Lake County. And we have no evidence, we believe, presented that there's any intact deposits, any other areas of the site. And so that's why the recommendation up until this point has been to just provide for monitoring in those areas, which we would believe the facts support are sensitive. So I don't know that, I guess.
Thank you very much. No, you did.
Well, Mayor, before there's more back and forth questions with staff, I think maybe appropriate time to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Have a motion.
So moved. I'll second it.
So I have a motion by Councilmember Overton, a second by Councilmember Slotin. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, if any? Motion passes. Mr. Slotin, any questions?
Yeah, I want to make a couple of comments. Just like our city manager said, that the obsidian and some were found on the bigger site, but if I remember what Dr. White said, they don't have any integrity, and that would be the standard that you would use. When did we actually started with consultation with the COI?
Well, official notice of consultation happened in, I believe, March of, I probably should go look at the list of dates, but it was 2.5 years ago that we purchased the property. And so while this doesn't qualify as AB 52 consultation, we did a contract with Dr. White, and then he did his trenching, which included COI participation in all that activity. And so, but I mean, the process has been 2.5 years, and we started immediately because Vice Chair Beltran, as soon as he found out that we had purchased the property, called me and said, we have some concerns because there's reports of burial in this location and all that. And so that's something that was passed along to Dr. White, and he analyzed it, and, as part of the report, and his survey didn't find any evidence of that. But
Also, what, if I recall, Dr. White also mentioned that the big pile of dirt that's on the east side of the property, that it was not identified where that actually came from, if I remember correctly. Is that?
Well, I think he surmised about some possible locations based on other stuff, but
never confirmed that
Burns
it
Valley
came from.
Mall. I mean, I don't know how you would prove it for sure, but.
I find it interesting. I mean, obviously, environmental and social justice is a topic nowadays, but I find it interesting that only today the Khoi Nation brought it up. Just a comment. And that other part is, the desire of the Koi Nation to inspect these piles. If you have any cost that it would, based on the knowledge of how much it costs or what the way the Koi Nation wants to look at the piles at the splash pad, how much money that would cost? You have any number on that?
I don't. I mean, we do have a proposal from Dr. White on that part of it, and we have done some analysis on other projects, but we haven't asked him to analyze, like you're talking about, if the pile that's there of the redeposited material from wherever, if we were to screen all of that.
Right.
Yeah, we haven't looked at that specifically.
That's probably exceeds the cost of the sports complex to start with, I assume.
It's going to be significant, yeah.
Okay.
We've closed the public hearing. Ma'am, thank you. Any other questions, Councilmember Kramer?
Questions so much as comments. Last Wednesday, not Thursday, at our special council meeting.
Thank you.
Pardon me?
Thank you. You corrected me.
When this started, this hearing started. Of course, Chairman Beltran was here, not Vice Chairman Beltran. And unfortunately, he's not here tonight.
Actually, he's here.
Oh, he's there. All right, you're back there. When I asked the question, would you be willing to do the monitoring at your cost? And I went back several times to make it very clear what I was asking, so there wouldn't be a misunderstanding. In fact, I think we probably have that on tape somewhere. We could go back and replay it, but it was asked, and there was, as far as I can see, there was understanding what we were talking about, and what we are asking. And we're not, we don't see the evidence that you apparently do on the surface. I see this, you keep referring to the disturbance of the soils by the disking that we did for fire protection in a city that's had at least half a dozen fires in the last 2 weeks in the city limits in Grass. So that was done for safety, and we would continue to do that. But more importantly, cultivation of that property has happened continuously over the last 100 years. And to say that we disturbed this, the city disturbed this in this action for fire safety for our city that's lost substantial properties to wildland fires is just, in my opinion, ridiculous. But we did reach out to, we asked to try to get to a happy medium here. This monitoring that you want the city to do at our expense, that from the voluminous information that we've gotten, that you out there sitting, maybe this side of the table of the aisle has heard some of it, but you haven't heard everything that we've read and everything that we've studied. So when you make those comments, you gotta realize that we hear and have a lot more information on this than you have out there. But I would quite honestly, I'm somewhat, I shouldn't say I'm shocked, because in our dealings, I could see it's happened before. But we explained last Wednesday, I am sure. And again, I can see it, if we wanted to replay the tapes, that there was no misunderstanding on what I asked and what Mr. Beltran agreed to. So something happened over the weekend or over the ensuing 3 or 4 days. That's what happened, but I don't see a requirement, based on all the information I have here, for the city to pay for the monitoring outside of those site areas, which we agree to pay for, that have been identified by scientific and study. And I wouldn't disagree that you might find something across that other 25 or 27 acres. It's all over, as Mr. Flores said, you can find arrowheads or obsidian parts. It could be tools. I mean, they're all over. There's no question about it. But that's different than the deeper evidence of cultural resources that would drive us to make a decision to pay for this, which is really not going to be cheap. This city is stretching to build this sports complex. A sports complex is going to benefit all of us and all of your people, your folks as well. McCoy's, the limbs. It's going to benefit everybody. And we're stretching to make this thing work. And we're asking that you also stretch a little bit more to help us make that work. You want us to give everything in, and you don't want to, you say you want this to happen, but your actions are not showing me that. And that's about all I have to say.
Councilmember Overton.
Thank you, Councilmember Kramer. Some of those I could reiterate, but I won't. So I have a few questions. When Dr. White went out with the COI to do the survey, who was the one who went with him? Who was the ones that went out with as the monitors?
Address it to Alan.
They're not here.
Address
Okay.
your questions to the city manager, please.
So who was that? So do we know?
Well, I can pull up the report and.
But they're not here anyway. So I guess, because my question is they went out and spent 2 days out there with him. I mean, that was what was told to us last week, right? And so they had 2 days to walk around this property, and they really found nothing significant that they reported. So I'm not quite sure why we're even here on the issue. You guys went out with him, you spent 2 days with him, walking around, doing all these things. Dr. Parker, I'm sorry, you brought us this book that had these proofs. To me, that wasn't proof at all. He never had permission to be there. He had never had any witnesses. And I've actually personally seen him make these items. So I can't really take what he says when he doesn't let anybody else go with him. It seems like every time he wants to go look at something, he never waits for our staff. So I just really have a hard time dealing with his reports on a significant matter. It looks like to me we have changed a ton of things for here, you guys. We have went out of our way. We have laws that we have to follow just by you guys that haven't been here through all this stuff. We have CEQA laws we have to follow. We have AB 52 that we have to follow. If we come across anything that is even slightly, significant, we have to stop the project and we have to call them in. So there's never not going to be something, if something happens, they're going to be called. We had to do it on Mullen, we've done it before on all of our projects. So where you say we don't respect or include you guys in our project, I want you to look at our logo. Our logo, we went out of our way to make sure the Thule boat and some kind of a symbol up there that hopefully you guys felt like represented you guys. I mean, we sat on the committee to make sure that happened. So I didn't really appreciate when you said we don't care about your resources. We care very much. Since I've sat on city council, when I first began 18 and some years ago, I fought for every tribe to have a place on every committee that I sat on. So to me, saying that to me was just, pretty devastating, like you think is devastating to you on your culture. What you said about us not caring was pretty devastating to me, because I feel like we have went way and beyond what was absolutely necessary. I also went back and watched the Planning Commission meeting. Why did this not get stopped there? If you had such concerns, to me, why did you not stop it there? You got up and said, hey, all good. All good. I sat and watched it, rewound it, went back and watched it. It was all good. So I'm not quite sure. Everything we've done, all the paperwork we've changed and tried to work our very best with you guys in every way. And you're saying we're not, but we have went out of our way, above and beyond, I feel, to make everything that we could. Paying for a monitor, one, the project wouldn't even go through. We could never afford. You guys don't realize how much monitoring costs, what they want to charge. We would not be able to do the project if we had to have a monitor there every bit of that project. It would never fail. Don't we want a baseball field? Don't we want these things to happen? We have offered to let them come and be the monitor on the areas that have been specified, with them being there, by the way. They were there when this happened. So, you know, they were included in it, you know, so I think that we went way beyond, and I want you guys to understand that we have done that because they're acting like we haven't, but we have. You know, we have went way above. They were there through all of the process. They were there when these places were designated out. We've offered to cap them. We've even offered to go above and beyond what we actually had to do. And so I feel like we've changed our documents for them. We're going to train our people before they do anything. So to me, this project just needs to move forward. And I'm sorry if you guys don't feel that way, but I feel like we really went out of our way for you guys. And I don't think there's any give anymore.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do want to say everyone who came up today to give testimony, thank you. I know that's difficult and it was very compelling. I'm also glad we got some clarity. I know this was covered last time, but from the city on how we've been responsive to issues and really have come back with some extensive mitigation measures. One of the gentlemen who came up said, "Be the example for everyone who's watching," and I think we are. This is the most we've added to a city-run project, as far as I know, and it shows a lot of progress. And I really appreciate city staff. I appreciate the COI for helping us add some of this rigor to our processes. I think everyone has said that we have gone pretty far on this. And yes, there's a difference in opinion on have we gone far enough? Have we gone too far? I can appreciate that, but I do appreciate everyone involved. I think a few council members said this, and someone mentioned that this is a multi-million-dollar project. No one's making money off of this project. This is a park. This is something where we have businesses, we have service organizations, we have individuals volunteering their time, donating to, trying to figure out ways to make this happen. I can appreciate the sensitivities around this, and that's why I was really vocal about including the new verbiage for TCR 4. You know, if you want to be here to pick up the pieces, I agree with that, and I want you to be there as well. I believe our mitigations are sufficient. If there's a difference of opinion, you're welcome to be there. So I guess to quote another person who came up, to cut to the heart of the matter, does this meet AB 52 standards? I believe it does. I believe these mitigation measures are sufficient, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into this on both sides. And I hope that we can move forward with this and have a great space that we can all enjoy.
Any other comments? Mr. Flora, one of the challenges or allegations was that our staff is not trained in AB 52. Is that accurate?
Well, the staff involved, or our planning staff have received a number of trainings in AB 52. I mean, this isn't this was initiated back in 2015.
Right.
It's been around for a little while now. I think, well, so a couple of years ago, we several of us participated in AB 52 training that was held by the Bimatal tribe, and we even had some representatives from our police department there. I attended personally. I know some of our planners who used to work for the county had training there. More recently, we have Lisa Westwood we've hired to sort of help make our process a little more precise, and she's provided a 3-hour training to all of our planning staff. I attended that as well, Miss Leba. But it's a continued concern from the tribe. So we have been putting together details on additional training that will be open to the public, including members of the city council, planning commission, other agencies. I think there's always additional things that we can learn. I mean, with Miss Westwood's guidance, we've adopted a number of additional forms and whatnot to be more clear and track the process and timelines. It's a little different on this type of project. But, you know, private development project, we also have a responsibility under the Permit Streamlining Act to respond to some of these things in a certain time period. And as some of you have been involved in development before would understand that a lot of development projects that take 2.5 years to get to this point just, you know, wouldn't happen. But anyway, we've put a lot of new things in place to make sure that there's more clarity for staff on what our responsibility is, be more transparent with the tribe. And like, for example, this project, when we went back and did additional consultation meetings, we formally ended consultation with a very detailed letter. That's one of the things, if you're not in agreement, you can end consultation. That was the first time that we provided that type of response. So I don't know, I could go on, but I'm just trying to provide a little bit of color. Some of
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, they've been trained. Yes.
Also, is it the city's process to obtain bids, to go out to RFP to find the best resources and pricing for work to be done in all capacities, whether it be HVAC or electrical work, paving work, anything like that would take place in the city?
Yes, we do.
Because we're required to by law. Have we also investigated different price ranging for tribal monitoring of business sites or building sites?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I mean, you know, we yeah, I mean, we're familiar with what some of the other tribes charge and whatnot. So yeah, there's a bit of variety out there.
Okay, and to drill down a little bit, I think into one of Councilmember Slotin's comments, if we were requested to do screen sifting and things like this in an attempt to recover artifacts, wouldn't that cost in a project this size be astronomical?
Well, yeah, you know, it certainly could be. And, you know, that's something that from our perspective on our obligation under the law, you know, if we were to dig up an intact deposit, you know, that's something that we would have to do. But right, yeah, the mitigation measures require that the project be, well, if human remains are discovered within 100 feet of that area, the project has to stop. Normally, you know, if something is dug up, like, for example, if there's some soil that there's concern might be midden, which is related to potential human remains, you know, we would stop in that area, have the archaeologists come out, call the tribe and work through that process on whether we're going to move forward or how we have to adapt from there.
And to my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, we've been absolutely consistent in that and forthright in our reporting whenever a site has been identified.
Yeah, I'm not aware of an issue since I've been here where we
Right.
Discovered something and, you know, didn't immediately contact the tribe.
Of course. Any other comments? All right, we'll bring it back to council.
Just as a general comment, everybody has said this is a unique opportunity for the city of Clearlake to both help. First, we're going to have an amazing sports complex that's going to have tremendous health benefits to the community. You know, if you look at all the statistics about health in the county or in the state, Lake County is one of the worst because we don't have these kind of facilities. So this is, for a health concern, a very major project that we need to proceed on. And there are issues. There will be issues. But I think we need to move forward with this.
Thank you.
That's all I have to say.
Just a final comment that came to mind. I absolutely agree. People deserve to be paid a wage, to be compensated for a profession or for specific education they've received. I absolutely believe that. But I also believe in community. And I'm sorry that Mr. Harris left because he's been very gracious in providing funding and materials and equipment and even his own professional services when we needed to heat, cool our animal shelter. I come from a family who volunteered significantly in building projects. I've poured a lot of concrete and helped the city all gratis for free, so children could have a better place to play. I know that we've got police officers who donate their time, either in uniform or out of uniform, again, to help our community. And it's that community coming together to reach the common good. What's going to be good for our kids? What's going to be good for the future of all of us, Indigenous and the rest of us. I have a great respect and admiration for our tribal members. I grew up with them. We've been friends for a lifetime for me. So this is something that is very important, and I want to make sure that we do get it right. But at a point, I almost feel as though we're being accused of violations that we've worked really hard to try to mitigate, overcome. As Councilmember Overton pointed out, we've changed the design, and we're looking at capping and filling rather than any earth intrusions, again, to preserve the resources that haven't been identified on the site. I guess what I'm looking at is, I mentioned in our meeting with Chairman Beltran and Vice Chairman Beltran, and other tribal members, that we had hoped to extend an olive branch so we could work together and invite you to the site to watch, and if something was available to recover, that you would be welcome to recover that. But we're talking about several acres, a large area that frankly our budget is stretched pretty thin just to get the project done and across the finish line. So just like any project you would do on your home, if you wanted to add HVAC or you wanted to extend a driveway, add a swimming pool, you got to work within a budget, and that's what we're doing with this project. And we also have a responsibility to the taxpayers that we will do this at the best price, and I believe that's what we've done. I will close for now on Councilmember Slotin.
Yeah, I have one more comment. Like today, social justice and environmental justice came up, and inclusion and all those things are pretty dear to my heart. I had a conversation with Mr. Dino Beltran and talked about my two adopted kids who are from Guatemala, and I believe he has a connection to Guatemala. And they grew up in the city of Davis. And if you see how my two browner boys were treated compared to my blonde daughter, I know what it means. So don't think that I'm not aware of those kind of issues. Thank you.
Any other comments or as we deliberate, Vice Mayor? Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution 2023-03, a resolution of the City Council of Clearlake denying application APCC 2023-01 and upholding the planning decisions of April 25th, 2023, approving the reference projects.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I think we need to clarify for the record whether this includes the initial mitigation measures or any of the amended ones.
Thank you, Mr. Flor.
My motion would have the amended measures that were shared today.
I'll repeat my second.
I'm just going to briefly explain. The amended measure does have the TCR 4, among some other things, that speaks to the city shall invite Cree Nation in Northern California to participate in tribal monitoring during ground disturbance activities for the project area. The monitoring shall be required during ground disturbing activity within 50 feet of the known cultural resource locations and subterranean cultural resources investigation. The monitor selected by the tribe shall be paid for monitoring of these sensitive locations during the ground disturbing activity. In addition, the COI shall be allowed the opportunity to observe on an unpaid volunteer basis during ground disturbing activity on other non-sensitive areas of project site. I think that's what you read, Vice Mayor. I wanted to incorporate, make sure that's the same language we're talking about.
Yes.
If I could bring up one thing, I didn't realize that this said within 50 feet of the known resource. What we had agreed to with the tribe was 100 feet.
Thank you.
So I would recommend that be corrected.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to amend my amendment to my motion to change TCR-4 from 50 feet to 100 feet.
I'll second that motion again.
So I have an amended motion and I have a second to that amended motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye or nay if you're opposed. Madam Clerk.
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
I just want to thank everyone. This is it was difficult. I just want to thank you all for being a part of the conversation, being a part of our community as we move along. Your voices are important to us, and we appreciate your time. Moving on to item 6, adoption of the Clearlake City's budget for fiscal year 2023-24. Mr. Flora.
I'll turn it over to Director Wells.
As the financial and policy implications of the fiscal year 2023-24 budget were discussed at the 5 p.m. budget session this evening, the council is being asked to adopt the proposed fiscal year 2023-24 budget by resolution 2023-27, which includes all components of the budget book and the fiscal year 2023-24 salary schedule.
Thank you. Any questions?
Look at the fee schedule.
I will open it up to the public for any comment on this item. Seeing no comment, any hand raised on the Zoom, Madam Clerk?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
Bring it back to the council.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve or adopt resolution number 2023-27 of the City of Clear Lake budget for the fiscal year 23-24.
A motion by Councilmember Kramer and a second by Councilmember Overton. All those in favor?
Aye. Oh, sorry. That was used.
Aye.
Aye.
There we go.
Yeah, this is gone.
Or opposed if you don't agree.
I don't know how that works. Okay.
Just move on.
You need to record your vote.
Councilmember Overton is voicing her vote as aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes with the unanimous vote of the council.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to item 7, adoption of appropriations limit for fiscal year 2023-24 and designating the formula to be used for calculation of same. Again, to our finance director. Ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor Purdock. As you are aware, it is necessary for the city council to adopt an appropriations limit each fiscal year in compliance with Proposition 4, the GAN limit. The fiscal year 2023-24 appropriations limit for the city of Clearlake is $10,294,448. The city's appropriations that are subject to the GAN limit are $9,173,802. And are well below the appropriations limit. The council is being asked to adopt resolution number 2023-28, the appropriations limit for fiscal year 2023-24, and designating the formula to be used for calculation of the same.
Any questions of staff? Seeing none, I will open it to the community for public comment. No one's racing to the podium. Anyone on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
Bring it back to council for action.
Mr. Mayor, to make a motion to approve resolution number 2023-28 and adoption of the appropriations limit and limit for fiscal year 2023-24 and designating the formula to be used for calculation of the same.
I have a motion by Councilmember Kramer and a second by Councilmember Overton. All those in favor, as soon as we refresh. Aye, or if opposed, say nay. Aye.
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Good job, Councilmember Overton. Moving on to item number 8, adoption of the City of Clear Lake's fee schedule. Back over to our finance director.
Mayor Purdock, the city reviews and asks council to approve updates to the fee schedule annually. The proposed fee schedule has minor changes noted in red and have been requested for clarification purposes. The council is being asked to adopt the fiscal year 2023-24 fee schedule by resolution number 2023-29.
Thank you. Any questions of staff on fee schedule? Any questions from those here in attendance on the fee schedule? Seeing none, any hand on the Zoom?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
Bring it back to council for action.
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Overton.
The recommended changes are in red, and they're primarily related to clarification of the particular fee. For example, the building permits, there's a BVD fee table that is noted in an upper portion. It wasn't particularly clear in the initial fee schedule what was being referenced. And so some of the changes are really about making it clear for people to understand what the charges are.
I just find it interesting to see that we have a deer tag sign off on our fees list. I didn't know.
We used to do that for free.
Oh, yeah. Just being.
Local fire chief, he can sign it too.
Okay, any other deliberation, any questions on other fees? Seeing none. Do I have a motion?
All right, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2023-29, adoption of the City of Clear Lake's 23-24, what you said, fee schedule.
I'll second that.
Motion by Councilmember Kramer and a second by Councilmember Slotin. All those in favor signify by saying aye or nay if you're opposed.
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Moving on to item J, our business section. Consideration of memorandum of understanding between the City of Clear Lake and the Clear Lake Middle Management Association from July 1, 2023 to June 30, 2024. Mr. Flora?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, council members. So we've been negotiating over a number of months with the Clear Lake Middle Management Association. Just for clarity, this includes some classifications in public works that actually aren't filled. our sergeants, our dispatch supervisor, and with this MOU, we're recommending the code enforcement supervisor be included in this group. Some of the key points. This agreement is for a term of 1 year, cost of living adjustment of 3% for all members. In addition to that, a market adjustment of 2.8% for those in the sergeant classification. I mentioned the addition of the code enforcement supervisor. Two other items that the city is trying in order to encourage sworn officers, in this case sergeants, to potentially stay a few years beyond their eligible retirement age. So this would include an increase in sick leave accrual for employees after 10 years of service, and then an additional longevity pay incentive for each year of service that a sergeant works beyond their retirement age. Those are the key points. I'd be happy to address any questions the council has.
Seeing no questions of council, I'll open up to the public. Any question or comment on this item? Any hands raised?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
Any other deliberation on this item? Council?
Here. Seeing no hand raised there, I'll make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between the city of Clear Lake and Clear Lake Middle Management Association from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024, and authorize the city manager to sign it.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Kramer and a second by Vice Mayor Claffey. All those in favor signify by saying yay or nay. There we go. Aye.
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Next, item 10, award of a contract to Case Excavation in the amount of $113,800 for the demolition of structures and abatement of properties located at 3191 6th Street, 3662 Cottonwood Street, and 16272 32nd Avenue, 14870 Clement Drive, and 3556 Madrone Street, and last 14081 Woodland Drive.
Now, you got a
Oh,
couple
I got
more.
one more on page 4. And 3628 Johnson Avenue, 16052 19th Avenue, 3287 3rd Street, and 15582 Sharp Lane in Clear Lake, California, 95422. Mr. Flora?
I'd like to invite code enforcement supervisor Lambert up to present this item.
Welcome, Mr. Lambert. Looks like you're busy. There's a couple of places going to be dealt with. Check, check. Should be a green light.
Just comes there.
I'm gonna do that. It's down.
Down there or just, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Purpose of this hearing is to consideration to award a contract for demolition and abatement of 10 properties within the city of Clear Lake. The purpose is to allow the city manager to execute a contract with Case Excavating for the demolition and abatement of 10 properties within the city of Clear Lake. Upon consideration, council may accept or deny the bid for demolition and abatement of the properties. Staff recommends the council authorize the city manager to execute a contract with Case Excavating for the demolition and abatement of the 10 properties in the amount up to $113,800. Property 1, 31916 6th Street. The case has been open since October 25th of 2018. They've had 18 compliance inspections without any compliance, and administrative citations have been issued.
All right to me.
Second
Well,
property.
That one was a little bit more expensive.
It's 3662 Cottonwood Street. Case has been open since October 29th of 2018. 18 compliance inspections have been done without compliance, and administrative citations have been issued.
All right.
Yes, it's burned. 16272 32nd Avenue. Case was opened July 11th, 2021. 25 compliance inspections have been performed. No compliance achieved. The property owner is deceased.
Just a quick question. Why this one so expensive? compared to
This
the other
one here has lead, the presence of
Lead
lead.
in
Mhm. So the other one on Sixth Street, it has let some asbestos.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert.
That explained it.
14870 Clement Drive. Case was opened January 10th of 2019. 12 compliance inspections without any compliance achieved. Administrative citations have been issued. The 3556 Madrone Street. Case opened November 6th, 2019. 27 compliance inspections. And again, no compliance. Administrative citations have been issued to the property owner. That's inside the residence. That's it. So there is a subject that owns the property. He does not live there. He uses it as his hoarding place and it actually lives somewhere else.
He was living outside of it because it's full.
Sorry, Mr. Lambert, have you made contact with this individual?
Yes, he's been in contact with us, yes.
Okay, is there a reason why he hasn't complied?
He believes it's not junk and garbage. Yet the neighbors say otherwise when the rats come running.
Yeah.
Yes, the structure will not be tore down. We're cleaning the inside and the outside of the property.
Sorry.
Great.
Start again.
Sorry for the work guy that has to do it.
14081 Woodland Drive.
Huh?
Case was open August 9th, 2022. 7 compliance inspections with no compliance and administrative citations have been issued.
Is this also a cleanup one or is this a remove the building one?
There's no buildings on this. This one's travel trailers and garbage.
Travel trailer is gonna,
Yeah, the property will be left clean. The only one that we keep the structure is the last one.
Thank you.
There are people living in this one too.
Correct.
travel trailer?
Yes.
Are those people the owner of the property or are they squatters?
He was the owner, so it was a boyfriend, girlfriend staying there. But then there was a restraining order involved and the actual owner is no longer on the property. But again, it's zoning violations. You're not allowed to camp in a residential area. And certainly there's trash and debris everywhere. (3628) Johnson Avenue. Case was opened in October of 2020. 20 inspections have been done with no compliance. Administrative citations have been issued. (16052) 19th Avenue. Case was opened in March of 2020. 36 inspections have been performed with no compliance and administrative citations have been issued.
Somebody that
I
lives
think 3 of the properties. This property here, the city actually abated a dilapidated mobile home from about 5 years ago. And then the same property owner decided to bring a travel trailer in and do this.
What's the address on this again, Mr. Clemens?
16052 19th Avenue. And then 3287 3rd Street, case was opened in September of 2020. 30 compliance inspections and administrative citations have been issued.
Garbage dump.
And lastly, 15582 Sharp Drive. Case was opened in September of 2022. 9 compliance inspections and administrative citations have been issued. This was a illegal homeless encampment that has been vacated, and they left a travel trailer and a bunch of garbage behind.
Thomas, is there any formula for how many compliance inspections are made? I know some of them are like 30 and a couple of them are.
Well, some of them, I mean, it just depends on the nuisance on the property. And it also depends on when the case was open. For instance, a couple of these cases have been open since 2018.
And the reason for waiting this length of time is to gather enough to.
No, mostly funding. Mostly funding. Yeah.
You look at the most egregious one to take care of. I
Exactly, yes. Yes.
You got some dandies.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lambert. I appreciate your work to help try to clean our city and follow our city, our plan, strategic plan. If we approve this tonight and authorize case excavation to start the cleaning, is there a time frame that he has to begin by and also end?
He would need to begin by the end of this fiscal year.
Okay, so June 30th. Okay, and when would he have to be required to have it done?
As long as he's done, starts before June 30th.
Okay, so there is no end date.
No.
Can there be?
Yeah, serious question.
I envision it would take him less than 3 weeks to complete this.
Okay, if he stayed on all of them and worked all the way through.
Which is typically what the contractors do, because it's easier to bring your equipment in and go site
I
to
just-
site
these are
versus.
multiple sites, so that's
Yes.
why I was,
Yes.
yeah. Thank you.
So to finish the staff report, each of the 10 properties were deemed to be a health and safety hazard as well as a public nuisance. Ample and sufficient time was given to each property owner to voluntarily abate the hazards and nuisances. Property owners failed to abate the hazards and nuisances voluntarily. Each of the 10 property owners failed to comply with an order to abate. Each of the 10 properties remain a health and safety hazard nuisance to the community. The city advertised for bids for the demolition and abatement of the 10 properties. 7 companies were represented at the mandatory pre-bid meeting on May 30th of this year. 3 companies submitted bids, which were opened on June 8th of this year. Staff recommends council to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with Case Excavating in the amount up to $113,800. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert.
So excuse me.
Staff or council have questions of staff?
So I assume that Case was the low bidder?
Correct.
And I happily see that seven of them are what are the pre-meeting. So that's people are interested in doing this kind of work too. So good. Thank you.
Mr. Flora.
Thank you,
Are
Mr.
you here
Mayor,
for
council
public comment?
members. I would like to make a comment. I just wanted to remind the council and the public that this is the last resort. Obviously, we hope for compliance from each property owner. This costs a lot of money. We don't have a special fund somewhere or a grant to use for this. This is just $113,000 of general fund money, which is what we focus on, kind of priority things in largely in high visibility areas. We don't get ownership of the property. We will attach a lien after the abatement is done, but just wanted to highlight the significant investment required to clean up this blight in the city.
Appreciate your comments.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to point out that in the contract for bid, the contractor did agree to, if the bid is accepted, they have to complete the work specified within 30 days.
That is important. Thank you, Ms. Swanson, for bringing that to light.
My understanding is the contractor if this is awarded, intends to start next week.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. Mr. Lambert, do you, sorry to call on you. I was going to try to grab you before you got over and sat down. Do we have the warrants for abatement?
Yes, the warrants were prepared today.
Great, thank you. So we're ready to move swiftly. No other questions? There, I don't believe there's anybody in Zoom wanting to comment.
All right, I moved to.
I did not open it up to public. I apologize. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. There was no one on Zoom.
There are no hands.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to award the contract to Case Excavating in the amount of $113,800 for the demolition of structures and abatement of properties located at 3191 6th Street, 3662 Cotton Street, 16272 32nd Avenue, 14870 Clement Street, 3556 Madrone Street, 14081 Woodland Drive, 3628 Johnson Avenue, 16052 19th Avenue, 3287 3rd Street, and 15582 Sharp Lane, Clearlake.
I'll second.
You read that better than I did. I have a motion by Councilmember Slotin and a second by Councilmember Overton. All those in favor signify by saying yay, or if you're opposed, nay. Come on. There we go. Aye.
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Very good. Thank you all very much. Next, we will offer the city manager's report, item K, and council member reports.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be super brief. Mudslingers Coffee on our property off of Olympic Drive officially opened today, so hopefully you have the chance to stop in and give them
Outstanding.
a visit. They're extremely excited. The only other thing I wanted to mention is the couple of meetings ago, I think I mentioned that the infrastructure infill grant through HCD that we had been selected to move forward on that project, and then surprisingly got a letter saying that our project didn't qualify. Have been working with them and Senator McGuire's office, and they're reconsidering this decision. And so we'll be talking to them soon a little bit more about how we can make this happen. So appreciative of the senator's efforts in making HCD understand that, you know, sometimes this gets a little ridiculous. So hopeful for a positive solution, and maybe we can get that project going after all. So with that, that's my report.
Thank you for the update, Mr. Flora. Councilmember Overton.
Really have anything to report, but I do want to let you guys know that I will be going out of town for probably about 3 weeks, starting on the 23rd of next week. So I will miss the meeting, the first meeting in July.
Why do you do that?
He's not planning.
I was going to say,
Don't do that.
don't just, now you got to wrap yourself in bubble wrap.
No,
And avoid any.
That part has already gone. That's the reason why.
All right. Just hope you don't get sick or something. I'm glad you're taking some vacation. Councilmember Kramer.
I have nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
What? Councilmember Slotin.
I have nothing to report either.
We are flying through this. Vice Mayor.
I had something to report, but I think I'm going to say I have no. I had a PEG meeting this week. Again, thank you to all the great folks that worked to keep that station going. Also had the pleasure of going to Robinson Rancheria. They hosted the Visit Lake County Tourism Improvement District meeting this week. Beautiful facility, great conversation. We are in the grips of tourist season, so a lot of really great advertising going out from that group, and we're already planning some new offerings to promote the county in H2.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Oh, gosh. Go ahead. You got to do over.
But he did it. So on Saturday at 9 o'clock, some of the Rotarians and we're looking for volunteers to come out and help us clean up our garden and also put in a pollination garden that the Rotary is working on with us. So so please come out and help support the Rotary in our community garden.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. I also like to thank Vice Mayor for serving as the president of the Rotary Club this past year. And I look forward to a grand debunking coming up next week.
I got to do over it. That got canceled.
Did it? No. Stand by. Anyway, I don't really have any meetings to report, but I did want to thank city staff, particularly Tina Veramonte. She came and presented to the judges breakfast group all the events that have been planned for the summer. There's a poster being circulated around town showing the concert series. Very exciting. It's going to be happening right across the street. Something else I wanted to comment on. Wonderful to see the kids playing in the splash pad. It's just no more do-overs.
Well, this is important.
Anyway, it's great to be seeing the park used. Kudos to our Public Works department and the Parks and Rec staff for our park looks better than it has in years. Seeing kids swimming off the beach. Our bubble curtain, I hope will be a great investment for us. Just really happy. And I do believe the city's moving forward and very inclusive in every way. So the Junior Giants, because she doesn't want to do a do-over, are still taking signups. It's free. This is a great opportunity for kids to have some fun. I believe they get free uniforms and they get to visit the park, which it's a beautiful park if you've never been. Great trip for some kids who don't get that opportunity. You just want to go again, just turn your mic on. So they get you free tickets.
So they send free tickets. Most of the time they're on a short term, like Monday, they sent us, it's for a game on Wednesday, but they're free. So, the kids get the opportunities for their families to be able to go down. And some of them really get to go because it's summer. And so some of them are at home and their mothers or dads are home. So
someone here perhaps that is a leader with the South Lake Lakeshore Little League might want to share that with some of the kids that would like to participate in that, or get it out to the coaches or those other volunteers. And we thank you for your service because it's a great thing to see kids playing ball.
Yes, because we hope these kids become the Little League kids, because some of the older ones, the only reason why they're not on Little League is because they don't have some experience. So they've even said that they wanted to play, but they were scared to. So it's like, oh, good. So we know that there's at least 4 or 5 of these kids that next year will be on Little League. So.
And my last but not least comment, I want to thank again the city staff. If you haven't seen our kayaks for lease for rent over at the beach, we want to give people an experience out on the lake and make it affordable and available for folks to get out there. It's beautiful. We live in a beautiful area. We're not taking questions, but I'll talk to you later. It's just a great opportunity. I'm glad to see the city doing it. Can't wait to see us doing more stuff like that. Thank you for your vision. Another do-over.
I'm so sorry, but
I'm trying to include everything that you guys forgot.
Since you brought up the splash pad, I wanted to attach a public service announcement related to it. So the splash pad has a number of water features. One of them is a large green pole with what looks like a wooden barrel on top. There's something that's not quite functioning right with the water feature. There's supposed to be some water coming out of the top of that barrel, but somehow the word has gotten around town that it was actually designed this way. And the way to get water out of it is to get the largest kid around and have them shake the pole.
Oh no.
Well, it's causing the pole to get loose and it could be damaged. So if you see anyone doing that, we're going to try to get some signage and stuff, but
don't shake
the pole.
Don't shake the pole.
Don't shake the pole.
Oh, for goodness sakes. That concludes my report. I see Vice Mayor has another comment.
Yeah, that's an income stream for me right now. I'm a big shaker, so. They hire me.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
Well, save
Okay.
save your revenue to fix the splash pad then, please.
Item L, do we have any future agenda items anyone would like to introduce? Seeing none, we're going to adjourn this public meeting and we will re-adjourn in 5 minutes to close session. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate you sticking it out through the meeting. Now, what do you have to say?